Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. There were no actions taken in closed sessions to report. We have on C3 an item considered for in closed session for action in open session. First, I need a motion on student expulsion, case number 2018-19-46.
I'd like to move to accept the stipulation with modification as to placement of the school to Rosa.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the stipulation with modification and placement of school to Rosa, moved by Director de la Cruz, seconded by Director Manieri. Roll call vote, please.
Director de la Cruz?
Point of order. Normally there's discussion or opportunity for motion to amend.
Okay, there's not discussion on this. If you want to make a motion to...
Motion to amend the placement school to L.C. Allen.
Okay, is there a second to that motion to amend?
I'll second.
I actually am going to go... Actually, I think that we need to vote on the original motion. I think,
No.
and if it has the, okay, actually, I will call for a roll call vote on the motion to amend. Okay, so there's a motion to amend, the motion made by Director de la Cruz and seconded by Director Manieri, made by Director Medina and seconded by Director Sheffield, and so we'll call a roll call vote on the motion to amend. Roll call vote, and I'll get back to you later.
Okay. Director de la Cruz?
Director Medina.
Oh, we're going to start with that.
Yes.
Director Medina?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Director de la Cruz?
Just a clarification, this is on Omar's amendment to my original motion.
Correct.
No.
Was that a no? Sorry. Okay. Director Manieri? No. Director Fong? No. Director McCormick?
No.
President Close?
No. Okay, so that motion fails, and which brings us back to the original motion made by Director de la Cruz and seconded by Director Manieri. So we'll have a roll call vote on the motion to accept the stipulation with the amendment of placement school to Omarosa.
Director de la Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Fong?
No.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay, we also need a motion on student readmission, case number 2017-18-22.
I move to adopt or accept the recommendation of the panel for case 17-18-22.
I second.
Moved by Director Manieri, second by Director de la Cruz. Roll call vote, please.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director de la Cruz?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. C4, statements of abstention. C5, adjustments to the agenda. C6, board member request for information. Director de la Cruz.
Yeah, I'd like to request information, making sure that we've got an update to the facilities master plan, kind of updates on timing and success so far. I know we're going to be hearing about some of the work in that, but just a larger follow-up.
Okay, C7, approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on July 24th, 2019.
Move to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on July 24th, 2019.
Second?
Moved by Director McCormick, second by Director De La Cruz. Roll call vote, please.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Abstain. Okay, motion carries. That brings us to C8, public comment on non-agenda items. This is the opportunity for the,
Just saying there's no blue cards. That's all. 0 blue cards.
I can't hear you.
0 blue cards.
I understand, but see, I say this whole thing, and then at the end, I say I've said the whole thing and introduce it to the public, and I see no blue cards, and so I have given the public an opportunity
just
to come
ahead
and
of
bring
you,
their
I'm
blue card, and
sorry.
that's the way we do it. But I appreciate you trying to move us along.
Just signal 0.
So this is the opportunity for the public to address the board on issues that are not on the agenda. If you have something that you'd like to talk to the board that is not a personnel matter, and if it is a personnel matter, you should address it to Assistant Superintendent Stacey Spector, who's raising her hand right there. Otherwise, you can address the board by filling out a blue card and giving it to Laurie Kolachek. I've been talking all this time, and since I see no blue cards, I have given the public ample opportunity to speak, and I will assume that there is nothing, no people who want to speak. And with that, we will move on to reports. D1, CSEA report. President Afonso, I see you up there.
Good evening, sorry. Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, board members. Pardon the errors at the beginning. I want to tell you that our professional development day was well attended. We had 92 of our members who attended 7 different classes. We have photos which we will put a presentation together for the next meeting. And we are almost completed our April 13 PD day and all of its classes. We hope to have it out to the membership in early January, so the classes will fill up a little faster. We took the opportunity with learning some new things that we need to take care of for next year, and have very nice notes that say do this, this, and this. So we're excited. So we have a plan and we're moving forward. And today being the first day of school, I believe everyone is tired. So thank you. That's it tonight.
Thank you. SRTA report. No report from SRTA tonight. LMC,
No report.
no report. Superintendent, would you have a report for us today?
I do have a report. I'm gonna just say very quickly congratulations to the teachers who were nominated and finalists in the 34th Annual Education and Business Partnership Breakfast, because I think the rest of the board's probably going to say something about that, but I too wanted to extend my congratulations to the very, very fine winners of the of these awards. So I'll leave that. Yes, today was the first day of school, and I don't know why the heat has to be the way it is on the first day of school. But despite that, myself, my staff, we all were able to go out to school sites and see what was going on. You know, generally what the reports about were things were pretty calm. You know, a few hiccups along the way. We had some things happen. The DeSoto Hall air conditioning decided not to work on the hottest day and the first day of school, but the maintenance staff jumped in and did some great things to get in there and provide some temporary air conditioning. I went to Cook Middle School and Cesar Chavez, as well as Steel Lane today. I got to just those 2 schools. I plan to get to everyone before the next couple of weeks are out. I have to tell you that what a wonderful morning I had starting at Cook Middle School and Cesar Chavez Language Academy. To see TK students on the campus is absolutely fantastic. The students did not know how to line up, which is the cutest thing ever. Just the cutest thing. And I had a young lady in TK, with curly hair with these little cute barrettes, put her hand on her hip and say, "You cannot take a picture of me." So her parent has taught her well, that you cannot take a picture of me. But seriously, I'm so happy to report that the 3 new classrooms and 2 restrooms facilities were added to the site to accommodate the new grade levels and students. I cannot thank the Cook Middle School and CCLA staff anymore for the planning, the work, and ultimately the transition of both schools in such a beautiful way today. CCLA had their parent coffee, and the entire cafeteria was filled with parents. At the same time, the CCLA students were having tours and lines all around the school, and they walked over to the 7th and 8th grade, and kids were happy and excited to be back at school. And I really felt like this is going to be a school culture that CCLA has brought their culture, combining with Cook Middle is going to be fantastic. So just a huge, huge thank you to the staff and parents of both of these schools. We're going to provide more information about all of this as we watch this wonderful collaboration grow. And I do have to thank the principals for their collaborative work to make this happen as well. I'm gonna thank these folks too. The maintenance and operation folks, as well as Mike Braff and facilities, really made this come together, folks. I'm telling you, I had parents say to me, "You proved me wrong, Diane. You guys made it happen. I didn't make it happen, they did." And so I just want to give them a huge thank you as well. And I want to brag a little bit about the Cook Middle School folks. So if you guys can show this, on there, the staff came together to talk about how do we develop social emotional learning on our campus in a way that's embedded throughout our 7th and 8th grade. And Vicki shared this with me, Vicki Zan shared this with me today, and I'm sorry you can't see this, but I will share it with you in my Friday update. But what it encompasses is embedded social emotional mindfulness learning, as well as the school, I mean, everything you would imagine starting out the school, but they've divided it up so not all those subjects are on the same day, that teachers are reinforcing the work that other teachers are doing, and this group of teachers and staff developed all the resources, and there's hyperlinks on there for the staff to use. Right, am I saying this right, Catherine? Okay, so I want to give a shout out to the teachers and the staff who did this. It was Barbara Gay, Erin Shreve, Tanisha Goody, Jennifer Dominguez, Rainbow Ashton, Gretchen Werner, Christina Kaplan, Amy Patton, Dan Zimbler, Jessica McNiff, Lisa Moore, Chris Ackerman, and Manny Morales. They absolutely did a fabulous job putting together the lessons and resources to be able to provide a wonderful community building start for the Cook Middle School students. So a big, big thank you and shout out to them.
Okay, my report quickly is that I was honored to get to present our a little bit of our strategic plan yesterday at the kickoff for school at the Luther Burbank Center, and that wasn't yesterday, that was Monday, but Monday morning, and wanted to thank the superintendent for putting together yet another great start to the year that was inspirational, featured our students, our former students, and then really great and important speaker. And I enjoyed being there, and thank you, Superintendent, for giving the staff that kind of shot in the arm to kick off the year. And it is always really fun to hear about all the cool things that our teachers do at the annual business partnership breakfast, and I'm sure it is really hard to pick those nominees because we have so many teachers doing so many great things, but it is great just to have an event that focuses on honoring teachers. I do want to correct the record because I got a thanks from Peter Rumble for saving the event this year, and it was me that said this can't go away and kind of beat the bushes for money and found a planner and said we have to do this no matter what. But in terms of finding the money, we have to also thank Diane Kitamura, superintendent. So that was our effort, but we want to make sure that that event doesn't go away. And so it was a last-minute save this year, so we have to figure out a way for it to be sustainable going forward, so we'll have to be beating the bushes for more money to keep having that every year. Maybe someone who has connections to Sutter, or maybe one of the big political consulting firms, someone wants to put their name on it. Shameless ask there. We'll take it. We've got a whole year to keep asking, so you'll hear back from me. But anyway, that is a really special event, and it's always great to see the teachers and their families and see them get a little extra dough in their pocket for their hard work. And then with that, we have other board member reports. So we'll start with Director Medina.
No report.
Director Sheffield.
I will just be brief while my voice is still here. To say welcome back to students and families and teachers and staff, and how much I did enjoy attending the breakfast yesterday. It was very nice, and yes, absolutely, we need to keep this going. And nice plug on seeking funds to keep that part going as well. I also this is something for calendars down the road. On October 10th is the Latino Health Forum, just sort of a save the date, 27th annual, and this year will feature retired Senator Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, who was very kind to education. He'll be speaking about Latino Latinx health and a focus on climate this year, but it would be exciting to see some youth in attendance, something that we can be thinking about as we get closer to that October 10th date. And then I'm looking forward to discussion on parcel tax later on the agenda. Thank you.
Director McCormick.
Just to reiterate again, the Excellence in Education event yesterday was fantastic, and I was just so impressed with the overall level of educators that we have in this district, and it's really fun to highlight it, and every single person who was nominated had a brief bio presented, and I'm just so impressed with the teachers in our district, so that was awesome. I went to the fair and watched a full day of pig showings and judging because my niece raised a pig for FFA because she goes to El Molino. However, I will say, and I'm competitive, the Elsie Allen and Santa Rosa FFA chapters kicked butt. Like, it was impressive. I was so impressed. And you could tell, I've never been to like a full day event like that before, and you could tell that there were a lot of students, this was their first time, and they were very nervous, and you've got a 250-pound pig doing whatever it wants to do when you're trying to control the situation and present yourself poised and collected and keep your eye on the judge and keep your pig between you and the judge and look like it's just natural. And the Elsie Allen and Santa Rosa students must be so well coached and so experienced because it just looked effortless, and I know it wasn't. And I was just so impressed with them. There was some class winners, there were some champions, there were some runner-ups. So I was just really proud, just big shout out to FFAs. And those, Santa Rosa and Elsie Allen were the ones in our district that caught my eye. Do we have other schools? Those are the two. Okay, so yeah, just super impressed. It was very fun to watch them in action, and I'm excited to go to the Elsie Allen Ag Booster Dinner this week to support Elsie's ag program, so that's exciting. And then last week, I had the opportunity to attend the Global Leadership Summit It's a big, the site I went to was in Petaluma, but it's a big international simulcast based out of Chicago, and it's a 2-day event with world-class speakers from around the world talking about leadership in a range of fields, and it was very exciting. Definitely learned some things that I think I could apply in my job and as a member of this board, and so anyways, I was just excited to have the opportunity. And finally, I'm just excited that school's back in so I can get back out and do more visits and see more of what this district does on a daily basis in action. So that's it.
Director Fong.
Thank you, Director McCormick. Great report, very enthusiastic. I want to help on the awards thing, so that the Metro Chamber, so count me in, I'll be there to help. I thought all day about school, all day about everyone getting up early, all day about the kids getting up early, laying out their clothes the night before, what they're gonna wear, the teachers, what they're gonna wear. I mean, you know, that's what teachers do. We think about what we're gonna wear too, right? And so, in the hottest day of the year, oh my gosh. So, M&O, yes, awesome. Teachers, students, everybody, really great. And the parents on the board who got their kids to school today, so all that great. I don't have anybody to get to school anymore, so that's kind of sad at my house. But I do want to just daylight again and reiterate a little bit about what happened on Monday at Luther Burbank Center for the opening thing. What do you call it, Diane? You call it a welcome back. Okay, it's not a summit, it's not a convocation. Okay, a welcome back. And it was, you know, I've been in this district for so long, and I've been to many, many of these with many, many superintendents, and this was by far the most impactful, deep learning that I think I've seen. I really, it just hit hard. If you're paying attention and you're open to it, you know, even though you have to get your classroom ready, because you're very anxious to get your classroom ready, so there's a big push-pull right there, but if you just let it wash over you. Dr. Curtis Acosta talked about, I'm going to repeat some of this stuff, he talked about a Maya concept called NLOC-EC, and it has to do with, and I'm sure it's somewhere that you can look it up, but it has to do with guiding principles of trust and authentic sharing, and it's just, I'm actually going to quote a couple lines to you, and I'm not going to say it in Spanish, but you are my other me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. If I love and respect you, I love and respect myself, by Luis Valdez. And this is how we need to continue to work in our district, and with intention, and because we're all about being here together in a system. We create the system. So I love that, I'm gonna keep using it. I'm gonna print it out and put it over my desk. And then the other line that I'd like to share and just reiterate again in public for TV land, because I know people watch this from like Fort Bragg. They've told me, like, what, you're watching? Okay, why are you watching? Well, you know, they want to know what the big dogs do. That's us, big dogs. One cannot teach without the courage to love. Courage to love. And you have to try 1,000 times. You have to try 1,000 times. Don't give up. 1,000 times we have to try. So that talks about every single student we have, every single program we have, with every single educator, we try 1,000 times. So thank you very much, Diane.
Director Manieri.
So last weekend, or on Saturday, I wasn't there, but the 4th annual Mochilada took place at Bayer Farm, and I just want to take a second to highlight that, because it was a really, really great event, and I just want to congratulate all the organizers and all the organizations that were there, and every single person that was involved in that process. I know that the days leading up to the event, myself and like 30 of my interns were filling up backpacks and getting everything ready so that we were as prepared as possible for Saturday. So I just want to congratulate Noemi and Herman and Sada, all of the organizers for that event, because it was really, really great. I saw the pictures and videos, and that group was able to give away, I think, a little bit over 400 backpacks to students in the community and in the community at large. So I just wanted to take a second to congratulate that group of folks. And to also just give a reminder, I just wanted to remind us all of the Integrated Wellness Center and the services available there, especially with all of the things going on outside of our community. Sometimes we think we live in this bubble and that we're protected, but we're really not. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that that is available, and that there are support services, and that it's okay to look for support and for help. So that's all.
Thank you. Dr. De La Cruz.
Happy back to school. That was a pretty awesome day today. I really want to thank Superintendent Kitamura and the cabinet for the important message that they sent to our larger community after what happened in El Paso. And I was really thinking about what it was going to feel like for Latino families going into institutions again this year, and how scary it feels to feel visible right now, and how important it was for us to take a moment of leadership as a district to say that we see you with love, and that we are going to create the circumstances in a situation where there will be no hate and there will be no tolerance for hate. And so I just want to say thank you for that, because it was really meaningful to me and to my kids and to our family, and I think to many other families, to hear that message. And to the extent that we can continue saying that and making sure that everybody hears that we are a community that's going to make sure that we do everything we can to hold everybody close to us, to make sure that we don't have people kind of slipping through those cracks, accessing all of those services, and holding each other close. That felt especially meaningful today. I had the privilege of speaking at the high school equivalency program graduation at the JC, which is a program that is for migrant and seasonal farm workers and people who didn't have the opportunity to get their high school diploma in the course of life. And it was a really beautiful situation, beautiful ceremony, amazing students and teachers. Really grateful for that resource in our community. I also had the privilege to hang out with Herman G. I don't know when he sleeps, for back to school shopping with the 2030 Club, and helped a mom and her kids come, and I was struck by how many people in need there are in our community, and how many families and kids took advantage of this beautiful situation where they could go and get back to school clothes and backpacks, and really celebrate what it feels to go back to school, kind of, you know, feeling like you. And so, let's see what else. Yay to all of the amazing awardees at the Business and Ed Breakfast Awards, which I was also psyched to go to. I also just want to give a shout out to the amazing teachers at Steel Lane who invited me in to see what they were doing to get ready to go back to school, and to share the work that we have in front of us to make sure that all of our schools are resourced and loved and feel like great places for our kids. I was really moved by their preschool program and by all of the work that they do for our special ed kids. So that was amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm psyched to come back and see you guys soon. And a special shout out to Santa Rosa Middle. I got to go to parent orientation and student orientation, and the way that they provided parent orientation both in English and in Spanish, and had teachers and administrators and folks throughout the school to really help people navigate middle school, which is already enough, right? And it was really important to me that it was not just kind of translated messaging that was coming to the Spanish-speaking parents, but really kind of culturally relevant translation. So answering people's specific questions, talking about certification away from being an English language learner into regular curriculum, and really helping people navigate that institution. They just nailed it. So congratulations, Principal Matlin, Vice Principal Bushman. Thank you so much. It was really, really beautiful to see that. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have a CSBA or NSBA report tonight, and so we will go to the consent agenda, and I need a motion for items E2 through E9.
Move to approve items E2 through E4 and E6 through E9.
So are you asking to pull E5?
No, because I would actually like to discuss it.
So I have a motion for
Second.
E2 through E4 and E6 through E9, moved by Director Medina, second by Director De La Cruz. Roll call vote, please.
Director Medina? Director De La Cruz? Director Manieri? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Aye. President Cruz?
Aye. Okay, I need a motion on motion carries, and I need a motion on E5.
Move to approve E5.
On protocol, did we change the protocol where there's discussion before there's a motion?
So on a consent agenda, it goes straight to a vote, but there is always an opportunity to discuss per our rules after there's a motion and second. Generally, you'd ask to pull, on adjustments to the agenda, you'd ask to pull E5 or whatever thing that you want to pull for separate discussion. But at this point, though, it's up for a motion. Director McCormick has moved approval. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, moved by Director McCormick, second by Director Medina. Is there discussion on the item?
Yes. I just had questions. I was looking at a lot of the Innovate Ed contracts, and I was seeing, it looks like we've had like a 4-year relationship with them. I'm just wondering, like, what mechanisms do we have to, like, for evaluation of, like, from the participants to determine, like, are they doing well, or how do we evaluate the work of Innovate Ed?
So the Innovate Ed contracts that are moving forward are being supported by the low performing block grant funded by the state. And so when we knew that we were gonna qualify for that and applied, we met with the principals and asked them about the relationship with Innovate Ed and some of the movement they've made, which has been highlighted through their interim report, some of which you saw last year as they presented to the board. And so they did agree that they wanted to move forward with Innovate Ed for this next year to continue that work.
And ongoing, do we have like a planned process, a similar process? Or?
As far as going forward with Innovate Ed under these performing block grants, we'll see if the state will still offer those up for next year. And then moving forward, we will work with the principals who work with their site teams and stakeholders to see if that's how they want to move forward.
I would add that the measurements are through their SIPSs. So the goals that they set for their SIPSs would be the goals, the outcomes they would want as they're working with Innovate Ed or anybody else. In this case, because it's identified through the low performing block grant, there are, based on per student, these dollars were generated. So it's not coming out of general fund, not coming out of supplemental funds or concentration funds. These are separate funds. So really the measurement's gonna be the improvement of the academic achievement of those students. That's the bottom line measure. And so if we don't see those gains, then that's where we have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what happened? So, and that is the intent. I know that we had reduced their contracts by a third when we began the cutting back of our contracts for, because we're in a structural deficit. So I'm sure it probably was kind of surprising to see, well, how come we've been cutting, and now we're back up to, these contracts. Separate funding, grant funding, specific to the block grant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Fong.
I want to make a comment about Innovate Ed, and Diane, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there have been questions from varying people about Innovate Ed. We've heard that. And when I really think hard about this, and I actually was coached by Innovate Ed as well. So when we're talking about moving our systems forward, being better for kids and having better outcomes for kids, then we have to look at coaching. And coaching is not just professional development for teachers and doing things different for kids, but leadership coaching is so critical. We have to have a really strong coaching component for our leaders, because if we don't coach our leaders to be better, they need coaching like everybody else to grow capacity, capacity at their sites. Bottom line is kid achievement. So that's what I see Innovate Ed as. And when we're talking about schooling, we're not only talking academics and culture, but we're talking excellence in our personnel. And we don't get better unless we're coached. So I love it that it's a grant, low performing block grant, which is great. So it's more than textbooks, right? It's more than curriculum. It's about shaping leaders wherever we find them, actually, and the word coach, the way we think coaching is a powerful, powerful tool. That's what I see Innovate Ed as. So I think it's a good thing.
Which is why when Dr. Guzman went out to talk with principals, it was really they wanted to continue to have those kinds of supports. Exactly what you're saying. So we acted upon their wishes around having the Innovate Ed continue.
Okay, so we have a motion. I think there's no further discussion. Motion by Director McCormick, second by Director Medina. Roll call vote, please.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Okay, motion carries. All right, well, that brings us pretty quickly to our F agenda, our action agenda, and the first one. The first one is F1, approval of resolution of district for capacity of inter-district transfer.
President Close, board members, it's Dr. Kitamura. Sonia Randrup, our Director of Special Services, will present the information on the F1 item.
Good evening. This is a ongoing 3-year certification of capacity of our classrooms in regard to classes that specialize in, students with special services. And if you have any questions, I can elaborate on anything this evening.
Questions? Director Medina?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I apologize. Not used to this microphone. So we are looking at the resolution to discuss interdistrict transfer capacity and numbers. So when students are coming into our district, we need to make sure that we have enough room and we have set capacity numbers, and that's what's outlined here this evening. Addressing specifically special ed classrooms and per se to why I am here tonight.
I move to approve resolution 2019-2004 to establish capacities for various grades, special classrooms, and special programs.
Second.
Moved by Director McCormick, second by Director De La Cruz. Roll call vote, please.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. F2 is resolution 2019-20-005, determination for Santa Rosa High School new agricultural facility.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, and members of the board. Tonight we bring forward resolution 1920-005, which will determine the Santa Rosa High School farm at 4260 Alba Lane as an educational and teaching facility, which would render a city or county zoning ordinance inapplicable to the proposed use of the property. The district in 1995 entered into an agreement with Sonoma County Open Space, which gave them rights for improvements. Lost my wording, I apologize. Which conveyed a conservation easement and assigned the development rights to Sonoma County Open Space. Since the Tubbs fire, when the farm was destroyed, the district has been actively participating with Sonoma County Open Space and this is the next step in the process in order for them to make final approval of the plans to start the rebuilding process.
Thank you. Questions?
I'd move to, oh, sorry.
Director Fong.
I move approval of Resolution 2019-20-005 of determination for Santa Rosa High School new agricultural facility.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director De La Cruz. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri? Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina? President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving right along. F3 is action item resolution for exemption to the separation from service requirement pursuant to section 24214.5 or 26812 of Education Code regarding Michael Milbraith.
Yes, good evening again, President Close, members of the board, Superintendent Kitamura. This is a legal process that allows for us to work with retirees who have separated from service and bring them back in high needs areas and without a penalty to them. And this allows for that waiver to go through to STRS so it doesn't affect their retirement. And it, of course, first and foremost, provides support to our students. This one is for a music position with Mike Milbraith.
Questions? Discussion, motion. Director Fong.
I move to accept the resolution for exemption to the separation from service requirement, et cetera, for Michael Milbraith, and I thank him for jumping right back into the pool.
Second.
Yes, motion by Director Fong, moved by Director Fong, second by Director De La Cruz. I will second the gratitude. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. And that brings us to F4, resolution for exemption to the separation from service requirement pursuant to section 24214.5 or 26812 of the Education Code regarding Laurie North.
And this is the exact same process, but for Laurie North, and really want to specifically call out what a rich community we have of students and families for a deaf and hard of hearing community, and this will provide that support.
Thank you. Questions? Discussion, motion?
I move resolution exemption separation from service requirement for Laurie North. Thank you, Laurie North.
Second.
Director Fong, second by Director Manieri. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries, and that brings us to F5, a discussion item, parcel tax update and timeline.
Good evening again, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight, we welcome back Charles Heath, a partner with TBWB, who is handling our parcel tax initiative. He is here to provide an update to information that he had previously provided us and to have a discussion on moving forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Charles.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm Charles Heath, partner with TBWB Strategies. We've shared several updates over the last several months, but just for a little historical context to remind us how we got here today. About a year ago, summer of 2018, the district initially evaluated the feasibility of 2 potential parcel tax measures. We conducted some opinion research in the community, did some polling, and reported the findings of the poll back to the board as the board was making decisions about whether or not to pursue a parcel tax measure in the November 2018 election. We tested a $50 per parcel tax for the high school district and a $75 per parcel tax for the elementary school district. And what we found was support that was hovering right around the 2/3 approval threshold. While we saw a path to a potentially successful parcel tax election, the district at that time, or the board at that time, opted not to pursue that measure for a combination of reasons. Probably paramount among those was potentially competing tax measures that were being proposed by the city of Santa Rosa at that time. And I think also because there was a fairly compressed timeline at that point for building internal consensus among key stakeholders and also mounting the campaign that would be required to reach that 2/3 threshold for passage. So when the decision was made to stand down for the 2018 election, we were also provided direction to look at potential timelines for a 2020 parcel tax election, and we're reaching that point, as I'll summarize here in a minute, where if we do want to pursue a measure, particularly in the March primary election, we need to take some steps here quickly to prepare for that potential election. One of the other pieces that we've been looking at since we've had some time in preparation for the next potential parcel tax election is to look at how a measure might be structured. We heard some feedback from the board, and it's something that we hear in many communities, that there's concern around the traditional parcel tax approach, which is a flat rate that's applied uniformly across all parcels, whether that be a small single-family home or a large commercial or an industrial or agricultural property. There's concern that that's a fundamentally regressive approach. An alternative approach that some school districts have taken and more are looking at currently is to instead base a parcel tax on the square footage of the building improvements on that property, as opposed to just a single rate across all parcels. So as I mentioned a minute ago, the measures that we were looking at last year, and again, this sort of follows the traditional approach that you'll see in a lot of the school districts around here, Petaluma, Cotati-Rohnert Park. They have fairly simple per parcel flat rate structures. We looked at $50 for the high school district. There's more parcels in the high school district, so it generates more money, estimated to be about $3 million annually that would be produced by that parcel tax after accounting for senior exemptions and the revenue that would be lost as a result of that. In the elementary district, we looked at $75 per parcel. That would generate about $1 million annually, because there's fewer parcels in that area, obviously. So that's one approach. I think the upside and the benefit of this approach is it's simple, it's tried and true. When you're standing on a voter's doorstep and they ask how much it's gonna cost me, it doesn't require any math. You can just tell them $50 per parcel or $75 per parcel, and that's why a lot of districts gravitate in that direction. But again, the concern is the regressive nature of that tax structure. So an alternative would be to look at basing it on square footage. And so we've done some work here in your district to look at the total taxable square footage, both in the elementary district and in the high school district, and then applied what are some typical per square foot tax rates to that, so that you can see what those measures might generate. So if we were looking at a nickel a square foot, 5 cents per square foot, in the elementary district, it would generate approximately $2 million, so about double what that $75 parcel tax would be on a flat rate basis. And 7 cents per square foot, just looking at an increment higher, would generate almost $3 million. So shifts some of the cost burden to those non-residential parcels that have bigger square footage, so that's why they generate a little bit more revenue. In the high school district, similarly, 5 cents per square foot generates quite a bit more revenue, a little over $6 million annually, and 7 cents over $8.5 million. So at this point, this is all information. When we did our polling last year, we were only looking at the flat rate structure, so we don't have any polling to tell us how the voters would react to this. That, as I'll summarize in a minute, that would be a next step, is to gather some opinion research on this potential structure. But at this point, I think it would be helpful to receive some feedback from the board on a preferred direction and to what extent you would want us to consider this in future opinion research. So looking forward, if we want to be ready to go to the ballot as soon as March 2020, which is the statewide primary election in California, big difference this next year as compared to past years is that California has moved its primary election early to March, so California's going to be much more relevant than it typically is in the national presidential nominating process. That means higher expected voter turnout, which generally produces favorable voter demographics for these types of measures, which is why that's an election opportunity that we're taking a serious look at. But if we want to be ready for that, one of our most immediate next steps is leverage the back to school period of time when people are back and engaged, and particularly parents, teachers, and staff. It's essential for the success of a supermajority parcel tax election like this that those internal stakeholder groups all be united in support of this and sort of pulling in the same direction and trying to see this be successful. So we would recommend convening those stakeholder groups in what we would call a parcel tax feasibility committee to discuss some of these options related to the tax structure, how funds might be prioritized, to review polling and come back to the board with some recommendations. And then based on that, we would develop that follow-up parcel tax survey to gather some statistically reliable data from the community as to what voter support looks like for different possible measures, how this measure performs when people hear the kind of discussion and debate that would occur during an election cycle. And that will allow us to come back to you with some firm recommendations on the potential viability of this measure if you were to move forward in 2020. So we would need to make some serious headway on that in August. In September, assuming we're seeing positive results and feedback from those stakeholder groups, we would then move to more external outreach to engage with local businesses and community organizations and elected officials, then trying to build broader community consensus around this proposal, look at the results of our tracking survey and see if we're on track for a successful election. And that progress in August and September are important because the legal deadline for the board to adopt a resolution to place a measure on the March 2020 ballot is December 6th, which you can see in the timeline there. So realistically, backing up from that deadline, probably your November board meeting preceding Thanksgiving is when the formal action would have to be taken to place the measure on the ballot. So that means having a finalized tax structure, tax rate, the programs and services identified that the parcel tax would fund, be prepared to put that on the ballot, and then move into that advocacy campaign. So as we've discussed in the past, the school district can lead the effort to plan and prepare a measure for the ballot and to provide impartial information to the community about what your funding needs are and how a parcel tax might address those funding needs. But once a measure's on the ballot, no public resources, no district resources can be used to advocate for the passage of that measure. So that's why moving into a campaign, once the measure's on the ballot, we would have to put together a campaign committee, recruit volunteers, raise private funds to advocate for the passage of the measure once it's on the ballot. The school district can't lead that piece. And that takes some time and effort. One of the challenges related to a March campaign is that planning timeline for the campaign backs right up into the holidays, sort of that 3 to 4 months out from election day is when you're typically trying to organize volunteers and raise funds and whatnot. So if we're serious about moving forward with a March election, I think we also want to take advantage of September, October, November to get the infrastructure for a campaign in place, because come January 1st, if we have this measure on the ballot, it's going to be a quick sprint to February when absentee ballots go out, and then March when the ballots are counted. So that's sort of the timeline and process that we envision, some of the immediate next steps, and eager to hear some conversation and feedback from you all tonight.
Charles, could you add one thing to your report before we discuss, and that is a kind of an update, whatever you can give us on the effort, the CSBA effort on full and fair funding?
Sure, yeah, I mean, there's a number of different state school funding initiatives that are being discussed in Sacramento right now. One is CASH, the Coalition for Adequate School Housing, is looking at placing another statewide school bond on the ballot. They're targeting the March election. The legislation that would enable that is working its way through the legislature now. Not a sure thing, but it's progressing. And then similarly, the California School Boards Association has a proposal, the Full and Fair Funding Initiative, that has a goal of increasing funding for California California schools to the national average. That could potentially take the form of a statewide initiative that would place a tax on high-income earners in California in order to provide the revenue to bring California schools up to that level. I don't have any definitive information on whether or not those measures will be on the ballot and which ballot, because the legislative process is in motion at the moment. But you know, I think it's the rare election in California anymore where there isn't some other competing issue that's vaguely similar to what you're proposing. We ran into this in 2018 where, you know, the city's thinking about things, the county's thinking about things, there's statewide initiatives. So you're always going to be competing against something else. So, you know, and it's oftentimes unclear in the planning process exactly what those competing issues will be. So my typical advice to my clients is, you know, chart a path that focuses on your needs, you know, what you can control, and then you react to those circumstances as they become clear. But there's certainly some potential competition out there.
Right. Well, on the full and fair funding, I think I gave some report earlier a few months ago, but from my participation on the CSBA legislative committee is that the polling on that is very strong, and that they are gathering partners and working on trying to put something on the ballot ASAP. But of course, that there's no date certain yet on the ASAP, and I haven't heard anything different. But it does seem to be picking up speed and momentum. Okay. So with that, questions, I think Omar had his hand first, and then Director McCormick, Director Manieri.
So a couple of my questions are, well, first off, I'm assuming the parcels is both commercial and residential, right?
Yes, all taxable parcels.
Do we know kind of on the residential level what the average square footage is, and also maybe the median square footage?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I can get that to you. We have there's a consultant that's developed a full report kind of breaking down the square footage for different property types, so we can share that with you.
And in terms of support for like this type of measures, have we looked at historical data of like support during the primary election versus a general election?
We do have the historical data, and we modeled that in the polling that was conducted in 2018. So we conducted a survey with a broad sample of voters for the general election turnout, and then we also modeled within that the slightly smaller turnout for a primary election. Support was very similar between the two groups, and one of the advantages of 2020 is that, you know, normally there's a pretty substantial drop-off between general election turnout and primary election turnout. But because of the issues that I mentioned earlier about California being more relevant, more motivation to vote, it's kind of narrowed the gap between those two issues. And in school districts throughout the state where we're doing polling right now, we're seeing very little difference between those two elections in terms of support for taxes, which is unusual. Usually the general elections, you see much stronger support.
And in order for measure to pass, what's the percentage of approval that we need?
2/3, 66.7% of votes cast on your measure. It's a high hurdle, and our support in our last polling was hovering right around that 2/3 margin, which is one of the reasons why the district pulled back.
And has there been any preliminary estimates as to the cost of a campaign during the primary?
So there's a couple different elements of that. There's the cost that the district would bear to place the measure on the ballot, and that's a cost that the district can pay with public funds to the county. Then there's the cost of the campaign, and those are the private dollars that have to be raised to run the advocacy effort. Again, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I could certainly estimate them for you and share that with you.
And in terms of, okay, well, obviously we can't spend public funds on the campaign, but in terms of like involvement, like on a campaign committee from either district staff or board members, how would that work?
So the legal restriction is that no district resources can be used to advocate for the passage of the measure. So what that means is, you know, district administrators, teachers, staff members, when they're on the clock in their job, that's a district resource, and so they can't be participating in the campaign. However, on their own time, off hours, evenings, weekends, oftentimes in these campaigns as individuals, they will participate, and that's certainly allowable as long as they're distinguishing between what time is the district's versus their own personally. And the same rules apply for use of district facilities, use of district computer systems, photocopiers, et cetera. If it's a public resource, it can't be used for the campaign.
Director McCormick, then Director Manieri.
Well, first I have a question. Are we asking questions only, or can we make comments as well?
Questions.
Okay. No questions.
Director Manieri.
Most of my questions were asked by Director Medina, but I do have just maybe one or two more. I'd like to know who is a part of the feasibility committee.
Sure. So typically, district administration oftentimes will have, a board member or two kind of representing the board as well, representatives of your employee association, so teachers, CSCA, and beyond that, it kind of depends on the district. Sometimes if there's active parent associations, leadership from that group would be present as well. Principals are certainly encouraged to participate. So it kind of depends on the culture of the district and who those key leaders are that we would want to engage.
So one doesn't exist right now. This would be something that's created.
Yep.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yep.
So, questions only, right?
It's basically a forum for everyone to discuss the potential parcel tax and try to get consensus around how we want to approach it.
Sure, I'm just thinking about community outreach and how we can best do that. I don't think I have any more questions. They were pretty much asked by Director Medina. Thank you.
Sure.
Director Fong, question.
Purely hypothetical here. In your experience in working with other communities, when you do, what do you call it? Per square footage, square footage, not just by per parcel. So businesses would be paying more, is that right? In other communities, what kind of pushback has there been from business on such a tax?
So that's sort of the balancing act here, right? Is that on one hand, the per square footage option, it decreases the burden on the single-family residential parcels, so typically the voters, which are mostly single-family homeowners or renters in smaller residential properties. They like that proposal because it reduces the cost to them and leverages some of the larger properties to generate revenue. But sometimes those larger property owners then are motivated to, oppose or raise concerns because of that. So, one of the exercises that we would go through, and we've done the analysis to identify who are the, the largest property owners in the community, is to look at that, reach out to those folks, have a conversation with them, and make sure that they're comfortable with the structure of the measure. And that's part of that feasibility assessment to see. Because organized, well-funded opposition is a significant challenge for a 2/3 tax measure.
So that's what you would be doing, but in your experience with other communities?
I've seen opposition because of the tax structure, certainly, and oftentimes they will then fall back to a flat rate structure that doesn't have those same disparities in the cost distribution.
Thank you.
Sure.
If there are no other questions, discussion. Anybody? Director Sheffield, is that a hand? Yes.
Let's try to keep my voice here for discussion.
We don't have any blue cards.
No further questions? Or
There are no further questions.
Discussion.
And
okay.
I have called for discussion.
All right.
Director Sheffield,
first of all, I appreciate update on this and this parcel tax issue. We've been trying to get it out there. I have been trying to get out there. The board has been trying to get out there as much as we can to educate the community on this. That this is something that we're definitely putting a lot of time in for consideration. Some of the concerns that I have about maybe the campaign strategy side of things, if we're looking at the timing, if we're looking at a March versus the general election, if we're looking at March, I personally don't think that we have the time to do this. I think that there's so much that is behind this. I've reached out to SRTA and definitely want to extend that out to CSCA as well, that we want to have as much support as we can behind this, and that means we have to get all of our allies in the community. We need to get our allies in-house in order to do this, just because of the unique requirements of a parcel tax. And we also need to be in alignment with our stakeholders, teachers, staff, on an agreement on how the potential revenue would be used. I don't know if we have enough time between now and March to do that. And, you know, I have offered to be a liaison between the board, the district, to other stakeholders. I continue to do that. Just as, again, as far as March goes, I'm concerned about the time on that. The other concern that I have is on the traditional parcel approach versus the square footage approach. I would hate to spend a lot of our time, precious time on a campaign, having to educate the voters, the elected, on the square footage. It's really complicated when you get down to it. People understand the traditional approach, people who might be familiar with traditional approach. We don't have I can't imagine that we're gonna bring in a whole lot of revenue on the campaign side of things to do that. And when you're talking about campaign strategies, you know, in many regards, the simplest, straightforward approach is the best way to go. When you have a whole bunch of things on a ballot and you're having to explain it, take one ballot item out and give a bunch of explanation on it, you lose a lot of people on that as well. They would rather just take a pass on it, just take a no vote on it. The other thing that I wanted to discuss around the November versus March is everything else that will be on the ballot. I know that when it's a tax initiative, and as in the presentation you explained to us, that there's not going to be much of a difference between March and November, but there are, you know, local initiatives that are going to be on the ballot as well, and we are going to be competing during the campaign season on doing this, and perhaps this will give us time to align ourselves with the other local initiatives, local measures that are going to be on the ballot as well. At the state level, there is a lot of opportunity. There will be items on the ballot that are polling well, as Jenny pointed out, where we have an opportunity to really do something in California for our schools, to actually capture some funding that you know, we lost 40 years ago, to capture billions of dollars on restructuring the way that California does things. And there's an opportunity for us to sort of ride on that and say this is going to be, 2020 is going to be the year for schools, whether it's state schools but also local schools. And we can ride on that momentum. We could ride on the success of one statewide campaign, right into it on the local side. And I think that we would have enough time to do that by November. I'm going to save my voice. There's going to be more discussion here, but definitely, thank you.
I forgot, Director McCormick, you kind of held your hand up early for the discussion, and then Director CRUZ and Director Manieri.
Just briefly, I share a lot of the same concerns that Director Sheffield has just articulated. However, I would be interested in getting some polling numbers on the square foot tax rate potential, since we have kind of an idea on the flat. I would just be interested to see if there's a huge difference or if they're similar. I am concerned about the timeline. I think we do need time to build the campaign and get support and get everybody, all the stakeholders, feeling good about it and supporting in alignment. But I would like to maybe take at least the August step and feel it out a little bit more, especially since we don't have the numbers on that different format, and just see what it looks like, get the temperature on that.
Thank you, Director CRUZ.
Similar concerns about a flat tax being regressive. I know that per square foot tax can be more complicated, but I think with additional time to really educate our community and to get them to understand the ways in which we're making folks with more resources use those resources strategically in support of our children. I think with a little bit more time and some education, and with the numbers that you're referring to, essentially, I would love to know who the top 20 highest payers of a per square foot parcel tax, who they are, and see if we can do some strategic outreach to them to bring them along down that path. I think with some certainty about what those rates would be like for those businesses and for those higher square footage parcels, maybe doing some work to get them in on the side of the good and the right. So, and then similar concerns about a March election, especially if we are going to go with a per square foot parcel instead of a flat tax. Let's see. Happy to weigh in on feasibility, and I love the idea of getting community members who typically aren't part of these conversations in the mix. Thank you so much for your work. Looking forward to it.
Dr. Manieri.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to Director De La Cruz. With some time, I think that we can definitely make the most of this and bring in people who aren't typically thought of as stakeholders into this conversation. And to also echo what Director McCormick said, I would love to get some new polling numbers as well, sooner rather than later, to see what is going to be our best option moving forward. And I would also just to publicly express interest in being a part of the feasibility committee, and I'd love to bring, hopefully, others with me, so thank you.
Director Fong.
The feasibility committee is going to be very important. We cannot rush this. We are talking about students in Santa Rosa City Schools, which all of our students, which belongs to everyone, belongs to the business owners who work here, and the people who live here, and all of us. So it's not just us. It's not just the board. It's not just our staff. It's not just our unions, our teachers. It's everybody in town who have a stake in our children. So we have to do this together. So I would really urge us to spend the time to put a group of people together to do this together. It's not just us hat in hand going out there. It's everybody together, right? Do no harm. I love you, courage, trying 1,000 times, all of that stuff. So doing it together is going to take some time, and we can't rush this.
Director Medina.
I just have it's actually kind of more of a question. In terms of the 2/3, in terms of how the money is, how the bond measure is written up, is that like money just going into general fund, or is that specific for specific type of spending? And well, let's start off with that.
So the language that you would adopt placing the measure on the ballot would describe the intended uses for the funds. So for a bond measure, for example, for facilities, you're required to have a detailed project list that determines how the monies are spent. You don't have to get into that level of specificity in a parcel tax, but you do have to identify the categories of programming that the funds would be used for. Typically that's attracting and retaining teachers, supporting specific educational programming areas, counselors, librarians. I mean, it kind of depends on what your specific funding needs are.
Thank you. And I think in relation to that, I think like just the amount of time that we might need to like develop that, I think March might be too soon given everything else we have to do. Because I think for me in general, I don't like taxes, but I think I'd have to like really be supportive of what it's kind of going to be spent on. So I think seeing that process shell out will be important for me. And I think November seems really soon to me, so.
Yeah, thank you for the report and your continued work on this. I've been banging the parcel tax drum for 6 years and couldn't get there fast enough. And but I will tell you that I think, like my colleagues, I'm feeling like it's time to maybe slow down, though. And for me, that comes from a number of things, and none of them more important than the other, but kind of all together. And one of which is, we passed INL by the skin of our teeth with no opposition. Even the Taxpayers Association, I think, thanks to Rick and Bill Carl, took a neutral position on it, and in an education-friendly community, and it was very close. The defeat of Measure N, narrow defeat, but which was a surprise to many of us. Definitely, it makes sense to go the square footage way, but, you know, before we would do that, I think we'd have to like really sit down and make sure that we were not gonna have organized oppositions from business organizations. And I love the idea of, you know, getting a list of the top 20 landowners or top 20 taxpayers based on their size of their improvements, to see if, you know, if they would galvanize some kind of opposition. But the main thing, I think also considering all of that, there also has been, we have had about 1.5 years of some pretty public acrimonious relationships in this district that I think are going to hurt us at the ballot box, and that's unfortunate. So, but that's a reality, and we might need a little cooling off period. But the other thing is that I do think that CSBA is marching forward with something, you know, that's gonna be statewide, that we will benefit from, in the same things that, in the same ways we would use a parcel tax. On the other hand, we're not going to get bond money, and we have a facilities master plan that says we have $1.2 billion worth of need, and we have, you know, we've about 20% of that, and half of that's gone, right? So we know that we have that need, and of course that need constantly changes because things get old and deteriorated. So, you know, so from my perspective, and it sounds like we're all kind of all on the same page, is like, let's keep moving forward with the feasibility and trying to reach out and find out whether or not this is possible at some point. This is too fast a timeline for us, and we want to make sure that we'd have a strong campaign. Let's, and also see what's going on, bless you, on the statewide efforts, and also make sure that, you know, whatever we're going to go forward with, that we go forward together with our partners in, with SRTA and CSEA and with the support of our local business and educational institutions together. Director Fong.
So this is really a discussion item, right? It's just a discussion item. So how are we going to actually get action on this to start moving forward? Because we could be discussing this forever and not have any feasibility committee, or, so can we put ourselves on it like we got to start now?
Yeah, I'm hearing some direction out of this. So when we get towards the end, I can sum up what I heard in terms of direction, but I think Director Sheffield wanted to say something still.
You know, and I do appreciate you're getting the direction that we're trying to give you on this. I'm just, I would feel comfortable if we had a date, a time, a month. How many weeks down the road are we going to bring this back up for discussion? I want to keep a continued discussion because that's the start of a campaign, is that the more we talk about it, the more the community's hearing about it. And even though we're just a school district and, you know, how many people are out there listening on YouTube channel, the message gets out there by us having more and more discussion on it. I don't want it to be rushed and that we're sneaking up on it and suddenly, you know, in November we're deciding we're going to do this. I would just rather have, you know, it be out there that this discussion is going to continue, and maybe we can say, you know, let's revisit this in X number of weeks.
Okay. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm definitely hearing that we are not moving towards a march. We're going to slow down. That we want more polling, in particular between the square footage and the flat rate is what I'm hearing. I think polling in general, we may want to, I don't know, have to talk to Charles about this, but if we want to, well, I'm not even gonna say it, never mind. I'll talk to you.
It's possible, and if I can interject, that in this case, rather than polling, the better information might be going to business organizations, Taxpayers Association, and getting the list that Dr. De La Cruz mentioned is, who's this list of largest taxpayers? And I think they're the people we got to pull. The general public, the people who vote for us in favor of our bond, I think they're going to be with us. Is there going to be an organized and opposition, and if it's going to come from the business community, it's going to be well funded.
Right. So that's what I was going to ask, is that should we focus on that? And then I do think, though, a polling about what the larger public or whatever, however we draw the samples to test, about what they think, because it's now been a couple of years, right, since we did that. And was it right after the fires or right before the fires? I don't recall.
It was about a year ago. Yeah, okay. It was summer of 2018.
Yeah, because I also would like to test something that President Close brought up, and that is where we are with a bond much farther down the road. As you know, as she said, we have this great need, but I also think there's work we need to do as a school district with the community around our LNI bonds measures. So I would like to bring before the board some exploration of that around a potential bond much more down the road. So, because I think if we see CSBA come strong with something at the statewide level, it could potentially have a shift from a parcel tax to something else, potentially. You know, who knows?
So getting back to my question, I'm wondering if we can say October, set up a meeting, we can take some of the information that we have on the parcel tax idea, we can have a further discussion and get it out to the community that we're having this discussion. I think that gives us plenty of time to do that.
Is that doable for you, Charles?
Absolutely, yeah.
How long would it take to get the polling numbers?
Pardon me?
How long would it take to get the polling?
Start to finish, a poll can be completed and analyzed in about a month's time.
So we could possibly include that in October?
Yeah, if that's a piece of what you want us to come back with, we can certainly do that.
Running parallel to that, that would give us time to have some discussion with community groups, you know, our allies, and then come back in October possibly, or I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, in actuality, you'll be, at that time, should be finished, almost finished with a strategic plan. And you may want to, rather than this forum, have a community meeting or two as a board or as a partial board out in the community. So I think that would be a great idea as well, just to get some feedback.
And it's just, you know, I want to get this right, you know, and I was not on the board at the time when we did the bond, and I had some frustrations, you know, and from folks that have done some work on campaigns, we just looked at that one and thinking, gosh, it seemed, you know, for all the good that it did do us, it didn't solve, you know, half of our problems. And, you know, here is an opportunity for us to do it right.
I really, really appreciate that. We as a staff are thankful that we can slow down on this. The push to try to do this in March, I mean, we're thankful that the board's discussion includes us slowing down and being able to really get the input that we need to make a decision.
Director Fong.
So yes, slowing down, but we're 6 months out from March. I don't want to be 6 months out from November and be having these same discussions, right? I want us to buy ourselves a lot of time.
But I think that October time frame of having this come back, I think is going to be an indicator of which way you want to go at that point. And we may have more information from CSBA and other entities.
Yeah. Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, F6, Measure INL bond update presentation. Speaking of bonds.
Good evening, President KLOSE, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight I'm joined by Mike Braff, Director of Facilities, and Adrian Bika, Director of Technology, to give an update on the status of major INL bonds, which we've talked about in brief a little bit already tonight, and the need. We're going to go over just some of the basic information about the bonds and then go into the projects. Both Measure I and L are Prop 39 general obligation bonds, which required a 55% vote for approval in 2014. The bonds for both the elementary and high school district authorizes the issuance of bonds for school repair, construction, and replacement, including a large technology component. Proceeds of the bond are repaid through property taxes on a biannual basis. One thing that we've talked about with the bond at several different presentations and as we went through the process was really the focus on warm, safe, and dry schools, and then needed technology at both our school sites and into the classrooms, including devices for students and staff to use, as well as providing updated facilities such as the work that we've been doing with HVAC at several sites and roofing. Through the process of Measure I and L, and Superintendent Kitamura alluded to it earlier, the facilities master plan, through that process that was approved, I believe, in May of 2016, the facilities master plan and the work associated with that identified over $1.2 billion of need in all of our schools. The facilities master plan was not intended to be completed with the money from Measure I and L, but rather it was a roadmap of what needs to be done in our district over the course of the next 10 or 20 years. Another important thing to remember is that the facilities master plan is and can be a living document and can adapt as needs change for a school district, or repairs need to be made based on something that we thought was working at the time of writing the facilities master plan is no longer working now, and we need to make that decision to move those funds that were previously allocated to something else, something that we've had to do a couple times in the process already. Along with the facilities master plan that was approved, there was also an implementation plan that highlighted generally what both measures could do with the amount of funds that they had. And with the Measure L for the elementary school district, it showed that getting some basic necessities met at these school sites would deplete all bond funds that were approved. Similarly, at the high school, a majority of the bond funds for those same types of items would be allocated with some monies left over for other projects that fell out of the scope as defined as warm, safe, and dry and technology at that time. So as we move forward, and one of the things that I'll talk about at the end of the presentation as well, because of the newness of the board and the new members here that weren't here during the original approval of the bonds or the creation of the facilities master plan, is that we have a study session to look at the facilities master plan, the implementation plan, where we're at now compared to when we started and what needs to happen moving forward with alignment to our new strategic plan that I know that all of you and all of us are working very hard on moving forward. To date, of the $175 million for the high school district, approximately $132 million has been sold and available to us, either as already expended or waiting to be spent on current and future projects. And in the elementary school district, approximately $37 million of bonds have already been issued for the same purposes as the high school district. Total expenditures to date, and this has gone away. Well, hopefully it will come back. Total expenditures to date, approximately $70 million in the high school district and approximately $20 million in the elementary school district. And it's important to keep in mind that those figures were as of realized expenditures as of June 30th and do not include much of the summer projects that are either completed or nearing completion, where we haven't received the pay applications for that. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Mike Braff to talk about the major INL, focusing specifically on facilities projects that are either in progress right now, or in a state of delay, and we'll explain that.
Good evening, board and superintendent. We're gonna start off with the roofing and HVAC projects. We opened up Slater this morning with the remaining work to occur is roofing at canopies, the gas lines to be ran, and the skylights to be installed. They anticipate on completing the roofing and gas lines by end of month, and unfortunately the skylight is considered a deferred approval item, which needs to go to the state for approval, and that was submitted to them in May, and it took them over 3 weeks to get back their comments. So right now the contractor is currently addressing their comments, and hopefully we'll be back to the state within the next week, and hopefully we'll gain approval. Once we gain approval for the skylights, it's about a 12-week lead time. So we have a little bit to go, but the site is watertight, and that's where we currently stand at Slater. Moving on to Lincoln, all the HVAC and main roofs have been completed. Unfortunately, the standing seam metal, which is the skirting around the building, was there was a delay and it was on back order. It will arrive hopefully this week. The contractor will need 2 weekends to install that. They can't work after hours due to the programs that occur on site. Moving on to locks, we have completed phase 1, which is Brook Hill, Lincoln, Burbank, LC, and Slater. Phase 2 was bid, and there was a bit of a delay. It wasn't our intent to be delayed this long. However, between the site verification and lead time for materials, and also that this is the biggest package that will go out to bid, we anticipate the locks to arrive at the end of this week or next week, and once the locks arrive, we will receive a schedule from the contractor. The contractor has made comment that they can finish that package in 4 to 6 weeks. And with that said, moving on to phase 3. Phase 3 was bid on August 6th. The low bidder has yet to confirm that they will honor the pricing submitted, as they were substantially lower than the other 2 bidders. We reached out to them again today to see if they'll honor that bid. If they don't, well, let me back up. If they do, we'll bring that forth to the next board meeting for approval, and we'll get going on that package. If they don't, we'll move on to the next bidder. To get ahead of the game, from this point on, we're currently working on phase 4, which will be ready for advertisement in late September, which would complete the remaining 8 sites, and completing all the locks by January or February of 2020, which is actually a lot sooner than what was relayed when we started out with this exercise. Moving on to stadiums. We've completed all stadiums besides Santa Rosa High School. The only remaining item is the striping, which will be completed over the weekend. So by next Monday, Santa Rosa High will have their new track and field. Moving on to restrooms. The Proctor Terrace restroom project is complete. Minimal punch items to fix. And so that project is essentially complete. The outdoor lunch area at Steel Lane, same thing. There's some minimal landscaping to be completed, and the trash enclosure doors have yet to be installed because the grout hasn't come up to strength. As soon as the grout comes up to strength, the doors will be installed and that project will be completed. The marquee package has also been completed outside Piner High School because the vendor shipped the wrong sign. They sent out a single-sided sign and it should have been a double-sided sign. So we're working with them on getting the correct sign shipped to us, and as soon as it arrives, it'll be installed. Moving on to delayed projects that we brought to the board's attention.
Can we just go back just one slide, real quick question on the marquees? That's it for the marquees?
No, we'll go on to the next package until we complete all the marquees that need to be done. This is just currently what's in place.
These are the ones that are currently in progress. There have been sites that are complete, which are, I think, on 2 slides away that show,
okay, yeah, I'll wait.
That show the completed marquee sites.
So getting back to the delayed projects, early on we weren't able to get the press box done this summer because there was some uncertified projects at Carrillo. Those projects were certified in late June, and we went to DSA in early July. When we went to DSA, they brought up some questions which the design team are addressing and have been resubmitted to DSA, and we're just waiting for approval. If we get approval in a timely manner and weather and the site allows, we might try to get this done prior to winter. If not, that will move on to next summer as we previously discussed. Montgomery 2-story building is still in DSA. We have not received any comments back. I would imagine part of that is due to, as you know, the HVAC project, which I'll touch on in a minute, was not approved due to the open projects from 1994. So we're still working on getting those approved, and I don't see a problem with getting those approved and that package up and ready by next summer. Santa Rosa High School Phase 2 HVAC had some uncertified projects from 1998. The state has approved that package or design package, and as soon as we get the projects from 1998 cleared up, in return, they will hand the drawings to us, and that will be a next year's project. Santa Rosa Middle is in, the state had comments, and the design team is gonna address their comments in mid-September. We anticipate getting approval within a few weeks of then, and that will also be a next summer project. So all 4 of these will hit the docket for next summer.
And I think it's really important to point out what this slide is really saying. What Director Brough said is absolutely true. His team, and working with architects, when we start a project, we go to all available resources to see if there are any open projects so we can address them prior to project kickoff and estimating timelines. With all of these projects, we went through that very process where we saw no open projects at these school sites that could impact construction timelines or schedules until they were submitted to DSA and they pull up projects that were not completed or not closed out prior to the time that they're available online. So the dates that Director Brough mentioned, 1998, I believe, and 1995 for 2 of the projects. The online portal, I believe, starts at 1999 or 2000.
Correct.
For looking at uncertified projects. So when the uncertified project is pulled up, we then have to go back to the architect of record for that project and have them try and find materials, information from a project over 20 years ago that is putting a delay in several of these projects. Another interesting fact about this, even as simple as the Carrillo press box, the Carrillo site was not flagged when we did the stadium at that school site. The DSA came back with uncertified projects when we took the press box to it. So there's no necessarily rhyme or reason to what box DSA is looking into, but they've seemed to find them on several of our projects now. So Director Braff, the architects that we're working with even on projects now are assisting us any way they can, as well as going back to the architect of record for those original projects that occurred in the early to mid 90s, and would not be surprised if other projects are held for that time frame or before too. So I want to share that we are doing our due diligence before a project goes to DSA, but we can't guarantee what comes back from DSA or the timeline. And one thing that Director Braff said that I think was just wrong term was we submitted the skylights at Slater Middle School, and it's been a 3-month turnaround to get comments back from DSA.
No,
correct?
that was an incorrect statement. It took over 3 weeks, sorry.
Oh, 3 weeks?
Yes.
Oh, then I stand corrected. To move these forward, and so we're working on those projects in anticipation for the certification of the older projects to put these back into, put them back into alignment for future work, in some cases this winter or for projects next summer. Are there any questions on the delayed projects?
I am surprised you have any hair left, not pulling out your hair. That sounds very frustrating.
I guess you can't see me.
When something is left open from 1994, 95, 98, where can we trace that back to? Who's dropping that ball?
It would be the original design team. They didn't close out, and a combination, because the district has a responsibility. It goes back to the whole team, but it really does fall on the design team for gathering the information, is the best way to put it. And that could be engineers. There's different forms that need to be submitted at the end of a job, and somebody just didn't collect it all and turn it in, is what it boils down to.
Seems like in our district's past, we relied on a lot of human institutional memory, and hopefully going forward, we will have some additional ways to track institutional memory that do not rely just on the same humans remembering everything.
Every project that's been done to date for the last 3 years is certified. So we're not gonna have those problems.
Did you have a question, Director Medina?
Yeah, and I'm not clear if it's related to certification, or I'm just thinking about, like, 20 years down the road, some other project being worked on like this, going back to like the architect of record, things like that. Is there some sort of process that we have now, like where we keep that data / information that will be stored and available for the future, or is that something relevant, or?
It is, and it's all been put in a matrix, and in the last year, we've been checking off projects and gathering information, and what is going on right now is we're working with the different design teams to clear up all the open projects so the district won't run into that problem. The only issue we will run into is there is a few projects in the past where unfortunately the team members are no longer alive. In that case, there is a mechanism to get that resolved, and we'll go down that road. We'll get them all cleared up. We've cleared probably 25 projects already, and we have a few to go, but hopefully by the end of this year, they'll all be certified and cleaned up, and the district won't have any problems.
Director Medina to respond. To respond about the safekeeping of information, yes. They are keeping all records that we have control over in a safe place so that this won't happen in the future. I would say to the board and to the public, We don't know what we're gonna find as we continue to move projects forward, where the delays are going to come. So when we talk about our bond projects and the length of time they're taking, and I know it causes frustration amongst folks, we are faced with these legacy projects, which that word just really kills me because I asked about that, but these legacy projects not being closed out, workforce issues continue to be a problem in terms of locks, for example, and being able to install those as quickly as we would like. So workforce, along with those projects, it has delayed things. And what I think we have to do, and I want staff to do, is be very honest about that and forthright. Even though people may get upset with how fast things are going, we need to talk about why that is. And so you'll see that we will be providing that information. So.
Diane, I'm wondering, it's also important on how we provide that information. There's always so many of these questions. I like, when we're talking about prioritization and I know a year ago, 2 years ago, the concept of having the living document, and we'll go into discussion when we do our study session on this, relaying that out to, to the schools, to the families, because people are just frustrated, and issues do come up. It's just, we can do our best to explain the reasons why there's a delay. Whether people accept that or not, they do appreciate knowing why there's a delay and having that information, when we can deliver it to them.
I think that's a great point, Director Sheffield, and I know that the bond team has been planning to put out a mailer that actually goes to everybody on an update. So I think that's one potential way. Communications coordinator Burke is sitting up here, and our district newsletter is getting quite a bit of following and opening. We may have to go ahead and bite the bullet and do a bond newsletter as well.
Yeah.
Regular basis, Spanish and English. Because we are developing such a following, I think that it would be a mode that we could actually share information on a more regular and timely basis. So.
Yeah, thank you. I just, back to my marquee question, I don't want to forget about that. I'm just wondering, how many are left to do, what's left to do, and what is the timeline for those? That came in from a question from somebody who reached out to me. So
we'll get to that slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's okay to move forward? So a little bit, and we'll certainly talk about marquees, Director Sheffield. I just wanted to spend a minute on some of the other completed projects for both Major INL, including, and I'm not going to go through and name all the sites that have received everything, but you can see we've put a major effort into roofing and HVAC, continuing with this summer and moving into next summer with those projects that were noted just a moment ago as delayed. Director Braff touched on the stadium, fields, and track. That was one of those movements of the facility master plan that when the need arose that we addressed with those funds. I'll skip and go to classroom safety locks. The 6 sites there, Director Braff spoke about waiting for hardware on the next set, as well as the bids received on August 6th. That we're still evaluating in preparation to bring those to the board on the 28th. I've also spoken with Director Braff as well as our architects for the lock project. And in the board cover, I believe it says, or on the next slide, it says project or phase 4 and 5. Because of the size of the schools in both phase 4 and 5, we're going to combine that into one single phase to complete the remainder of the district. So that will be forthcoming with the expectation that that will go out to bid in September and then be in line for when the other schools are completed in phases 2 and 3. We've also completed modernization for Santa Rosa Charter School for the Arts, which included both new buildings and modernization, as well as stadium lights at Pioneer High. And I will go back to Marquise, Director Sheffield, and be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, so going back to Marquise, wondering what's left to do and the timeline on those for completion of total.
So, go ahead.
And the reason why I bring this up, I just, the safety component of the Marquise, we got to see the value in that. To me, it's tremendous, and that's why it's an issue that's important to me.
So we're roughly halfway done. And by the way we bundle or package them, there's about 2 more packages out there. They go fairly quickly. The longest time to the project is having the vendor fabricate them. So we'll get another package out right away. I'll talk to Rick this week on the next sites to hit, and we can get a packet out by mid to late September. It only takes a few months. So with that said, I would say we can complete them all by January.
And any sense of, do we know what specific schools are next?
We can bring that back to you, Director Sheffield. Before we move on to technology, were there any additional questions on the facilities portion? And we'll be happy to take questions at the end too, but since.
The 2-story Montgomery High School building that is delayed, and you said you'd bring it back to us in summer, I think, or you might be ready to do something in summer. I know that we had a presentation from architect. Is the plan already set for the building?
The plan for the building is set. That's what we're waiting for, is approval from the Division of State Architects, which that approval is being held because of uncertified projects at the Montgomery High site.
So once that gets certified, that plan is going to be moving ahead with the design, the floor design that was already presented to us?
Correct.
The one that I had great objection to. Yes. Thank you.
Translation, she's really looking forward to her next bite at the apple of opposing such the design.
I don't know if I'll have a chance.
So moving on from facilities to technology, I think it's pretty amazing where we've come in technology over really the last 3 years with so much of the credit to Director Bika for the work that he's put in, really bringing us from a district that had roughly about 4,000 computers, if you counted every usable device, to a district that now probably has 20,000 devices between Chromebooks, computers, iPads, and other usable things to augment both instruction and what we do on day-to-day from a business perspective throughout the district. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Director Bika to give an update on the projects that are in progress and the ones that are completed, as well as looking forward to what the future could look like in terms of technology need for our district.
Thank you, Eric. Members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Kitamura, good evening. I just want to clear one thing about the marquees because we were together and the material was put together on Friday and we didn't have Brook Hill, Steel Lane, and Luther Burbank. They were not online at the time. We just brought them online right before the school started. So that was the part of the technology part that had to happen for that to work. All right. So as far as the technology, can you ever hear me? As far as the technology bond program, project. We are at an interesting junction point in this project. We are done with most of the infrastructure projects, and we are at the point where we can now leverage this infrastructure to help the educational process and the businesses in the district. So this summer, we actually had to wrap up a lot of these projects, and we worked on cleaning up a lot of, networking cabinets and stuff like this that, they had to be completed, and we're in the process of actually closing these projects. And I want to send a shout out to my team, my technology team. They've been working so hard this summer. Not everybody realizes, but the summer when everybody goes on vacation is the toughest time for our team. We are actually doing upgrades, we're testing new solutions, we're refreshing software, hardware, so thank you guys if you hear me there. All right, so moving forward to the project that we have in progress. We're now working on security cameras projects. Cook Middle School is gonna probably be done by Tuesday. I'm very sure about that one. Next is gonna be Comstock Middle School, Santa Rosa Middle, LZ Allen Elementary, Rincon Valley Middle School, Santa Rosa High, Slater Middle School, and Lewis Educational Center. All the other sites have been completed. Completed as in the hardware is installed, the software is ready to go. We have to do some work at the sites with the principals to determine who's going to have access to these security cameras, and just to install the software on their machines and go from there. But as far as we're concerned, they're ready from the technology point of view. You will not see here the district office, Maria Carrillo and Santa Rosa French American Charter School. We're still working on contracting for those, and you won't see them on the completed list either. Okay. One thing I already kind of hinted, we're moving at the technology. Can we change the slide? We're moving at the completed technology projects. I already talked a little bit about how important all these are for the district so far. So the structured data cabling, everything runs on this. We had to pull cables, and I had some interesting stats at some point. We've probably seen those some time ago. So we pulled 18,519 cables. We pulled cables in 919 classrooms. These are just random stats I'm giving here. The 23 miles of fiber optic we pulled in the district. So this was a tremendous work, and it's of crucial importance because, again, everything that we are attaching, we're bringing back into the district relies on these cables. There's no wireless without the wires, right? So all the wireless access points are connected to the wire network. All the security cameras are connected to the wire network. All the phones are connected to the cabling infrastructure, and they control the clock speakers and the emergency announcement systems, which are also connected to the cabling infrastructure. The network equipment, that goes without saying, that has to run everything there. And then the data center, we did tremendous work there to make it function and look like a professional data center. Wireless we already covered, and then if you remember, we went strategically about that one. We provided initially just an in-time wireless, so while we were working on the cabling infrastructure, just to have the sites be able to run the instructional programs on the wireless while we were doing this other work. Then we moved to the full deployment of the wireless. As I mentioned, over this cabling infrastructure now, we implemented the voice over IP phone system. We installed IP-based emergency announcements, clock speakers, bells, and PA systems at all sites. And we were very intentional about this. We seeded the environment at the beginning of the project with laptops for teachers, wireless, because we were foreseeing that we will be having wireless at each site, and a batch of Chromebook cards at every site, over 2,000 at the time, if I remember well. Those were only laptops, and then Chromebooks, we can give more correct numbers if you require. And we are kind of in a position right now where we're seeing, at least with hardware for teachers, where we're thinking there might be the time for a refreshment. 4 years for a refreshment plan, that I think will be a very good idea there. So as I said, when we started this project, we seeded the sites with these wireless devices, and we had seen a tremendous increase in their use. And you have a list of the security cameras sites that were completed there already. All right, moving forward, we still have to.
Question from Director Cruz.
Question. So, do you use the same contractor to implement all of the kind of upgrades that are happening at all sites?
Yes, for different type of projects, right? For the cabling project, we had one contractor. For the network part of the network equipment, we were working with a different contractor. There were some, for example, for data backup and storage, we had another contractor.
Mm-hmm. And so does this work also describe essentially kind of integration of projectors in classrooms and?
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. To answer your question, so projectors, we're talking about classroom technology, right? That is still part of our bond project, and we are working on that one right now. We are in the, we piloted a few solutions at some sites, and we're still doing some assessment for the solutions that we would be having in each classroom.
Okay, I saw some pretty distressing photos at Steel Lane, for example, of wires kind of being draped across lights and wires kind of just hanging loosely, and some concerns about, different installation techniques and different treatment of different sites depending on how squeaky the wheel is, or,
Go ahead.
I think too, what this all ties in is the stuff that's up on the screen right now is really building the foundation for technology in the district. If some of this work would not have been done, whatever classroom technology we brought in on a large scale would have failed due to the type of infrastructure we had at that time. And we all know, me personally, teachers that I've been around in several districts, when something doesn't work, it tends to become a dust collector in the corner. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had a foundation that could support, one, taking, student to computer ratio or computer to student ratio from about 12 to 1 to now we're approaching 1 to 1 in some schools and 1.5 to 1 at other schools with Chromebooks that are all supported by wireless connectivity that all travel across a wired network through load balanced internet connections that traverse our dark fiber for access. And so building that in, and then with the work that Director Bika has been doing with testing and I'm not gonna say implementing, but having different sites test different types of technologies to see what will work, as well as work on our network has been very important. We know, and I know I've seen it firsthand, that teachers for a long time had very little access to technology in this district. And so we have a number of rooms, similar to what you described, Director De La Cruz, where teachers did what they had to do to get that technology to work for them. And so what Director Beacon is charged with now that we have you know, a stronger foundation that we're still expanding, to start bringing those tools into the classrooms, because we know that we'll be able to essentially plug and play. Of course, there'll be training and those types of things, but we're not worried about the infrastructure breaking down. We've built in redundancy where we could in order to keep these things and devices usable. And I use the word things because, you know, one of the hot word is the Internet of Things, right? Anything and everything that can be connected to a computer network is being connected to a computer network, including HVAC controls and other things that we use in this district on a daily basis, where we're finally at a point where we're not worried about major bottlenecks in traffic internally. We still have some issues with some external bottlenecks that we're working to address through the work that they're doing in the technology department. But really it's for the expectation of teachers and staff when they walk onto a campus or into an office, not hoping that something works, that it will work when they need to use it. And that's really been the path that both Director Beacon and I have gone down as we've implemented technology in the district.
That we're gonna move to the future projects. I want to emphasize that classroom technology, I have it under completed. We completed the first phases of the classroom technology project. We started the assessment. We are conducting some pilots at some sites. We are ready to move forward with this one to expand the pilots at every site. So, coming back to this slide, we brought to the board some months ago the project for the power infrastructure at the phase 2 the data center, where we explained that we need to protect the data center for longer power shortages, which we are told they are coming as part of the PG&E effort to keep our area safe. So we need to be prepared for that, and I explained at the time that there are actually 3 phases of this. We're now, we already have protection for up to an hour for our equipment, but in case the power goes down for longer than that, then we might be running into some issues with the equipment overheating, and we need to protect the entire data center, including the air conditioning there, so we don't actually burn our equipment while we're trying to run it, right? And then the third phase, and that's actually on the long-term future projects, is the phase 3, where we actually install a power generator. Also, to address the situation where power goes down, we are actually thinking to split our data center to have one functional system for the entire district at the district office, and one functional system that can take over fully at a secondary site. The only problem right now we have at the secondary site is not able to cope with all the traffic that would be thrown at it in case the data center goes down, the district office data center goes down. And we also brought the wireless area network upgrade phase 1 project to the board. That's the 5 gigabit per second circuit you see on this slide. And linked to it is actually building that hot data recovery data center at the secondary site. The planning is done. We are anxious to act on, but we're waiting on the E-rate for the approval for the 5 gigabyte circuit. We are also considering migrating some of our services, core services, to the cloud. Again, just to mitigate these kind of situations. And we're in the process of transferring some systems already. Some systems have already been transferred. We're making good progress on it, and hopefully at least the email transition is gonna be completed this fall. With this comes also a different kind of footprint we're gonna be having for our backups and for our data storage, and we're working to redimension all those. Also, we are monitoring the wide area network connectivity from the different sites. We're seeing spikes in traffic, and we expect it, and that's a good sign. That means that the network is being used. But it might be the case that we will have to upgrade these connections there through different vendors, an outside vendor, and they cost quite a lot of money, so we'll have to link it to another E-rate kind of a project.
And also I think it's important too that with what he's talking about with offloading our internal resources to the cloud, we've done that with the student information system is hosted in the cloud, as well as some other core applications that we use in the district, which is actually decreasing our data center footprint. So when we talk about having to have or wanting to have in the future 2 different sites that could host the district in the event of catastrophic failure at one or the other, that footprint's not as big as it was just 3 years ago. When we talk about data backup and storage, right, we're using a lot more online file services such as Google and some others, where that data that was once housed and backed up internally is now being housed and backed up externally, which reduces our operational expense as well. And it's also with how hard it is to find employees in general and find technology employees, bringing the additional burden of all this new technology and housing it internally probably would not be conducive to our environment, just from a standpoint of day-to-day management. So this is helping us in multiple ways to be able to use the personnel that we have to help and continue to build out this, and also have it remain functional for teachers, staff, and students. Moving forward, and we've already talked about this, was the future projects. Several of those are dependent on DSA approval from the delayed projects, as well as the classroom technology that Director Bika talked about. Once again, I'll reiterate that phase 4 and 5 of classroom security locks has now been condensed to phase 4 moving forward. And this would be, this and other projects would be part of the discussion at the study session that we would like to have to reevaluate our priorities today and moving forward. So that includes revisiting the facilities master plan. I mentioned it briefly, but still technology staffing, the need to maintain this, right? We can't allow 20,000 devices on the network if we can't support them. And so we need to take a closer look at that and how we can facilitate everyday use by students, staff, and teachers. Director Bika mentioned it, and I know it's on tops of mind of Superintendent Kitamura and myself, alternate energy sources for electricity shutdown. I believe at our next board meeting, we're gonna have a presentation from PG&E talking about their ability to shut off power if they feel there's immediate danger to the area. But we also have to look at that from a perspective of our schools, if that were to happen during the school day and or over a weekend or the week before, how that would impact the services we provide, as well as harming those systems with routine or possibly frequent power outages. And then it was mentioned during the parcel tax, preparing for the possibility of a future bond and what that would look like at some time in the future, knowing that in 2016, when the facilities master plan was completed, we had about a little over $1.2 billion in need with the construction escalation costs, the cost of doing business, not only in Sonoma County, but the state of California. Just based on those projects, we know the need would be much greater today. And as buildings and facilities continue to age, there will be more and more need moving forward. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Director Manieri, Director Fong, Director Medina.
Thank you for that update and report, and I look forward to the study session to learn more about this. I just have a quick question. I would just like some clarification around what it means if a school site isn't on the slides that are completed, in progress, or delayed. And I'm specifically thinking about, so I didn't see LC Allen or Cook under roofing and HVAC. I didn't see Cook under classroom safety locks or under the marquee. So I'm just curious about what it means if you don't see or if we don't see a school site in one of these slides.
LC's HVAC and roofing was done last summer, I believe, and I think it's on the list. What it means is that project hasn't come forward to the board for approval in most cases. Roofing and HVAC was done based on assessment and work orders to address highest need areas, and the assessment was done by a third party. It wasn't district staff doing that assessment. So really what it means is we haven't come to those sites in the process yet. We didn't put in future plans for all sites in this presentation. We focus on what we were doing now and what we have done to this point.
So I don't see LC Allen on the facilities completed roofing HVAC. So just for the purposes of approving board minutes next time, if we could update the presentation to include that, that would be great. Thank you.
Director Fong.
Director Bika, you've been in the district for a really long time, so thank you for being here tonight to explain things so well. Director Braff, good job. Both of you are gems because the work you are doing is difficult. You not only have to take care of business here, but you have to think ahead, and there are a million pieces to this moving puzzle. And you have to think about things that haven't been invented yet as you keep us on track for the future. So great appreciation to you for having a long work day, long work summer, and for being here tonight. And I did have a question also for Deputy Superintendent. So in terms of refreshing, and actually, Adrian, you spoke a little bit to this, in terms of refreshing the laptops, the teacher laptops or the Chromebooks or like that, it used to be before the bond, we just kind of carved it out of site funds or district funds, and now we're relying on bond funds. Is that what we're gonna be using for that moving forward, and what is that refresh rate?
Potentially, but not necessarily. So right now, Director Beek and I are putting a plan together that we are not quite at the stage where we're ready to share it out that this is the way we're going to do it, but would certainly be done in time for the study session where we can talk about refresh cycles for computing technology, both for staff and students.
And while I am handing out compliments, I want to compliment you too, because I first met you when you were the technology person, and you introduced me to the phrase dark fiber, which I still don't understand, but it sounds like super sophisticated. Oh yeah, we have dark fiber, and I don't understand it. But the point being, the work that we see here and that you described is phenomenal, because this happened within 4 years. I think all of this happened within 4 years, and that is how fast technology is moving, and you have to move faster, and of course we think it's not fast enough, but thank you. Appreciation.
Thank you.
Director Medina.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Well, first off, when you were talking about the WAN, monitoring, I was curious if part of like the internal like network like traffic that are you able to like monitor like, well, I guess the first question is, I imagine students are able to connect to like the Wi-Fi networks, right, like on their devices and such, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Okay, so yes, the question. Are you able to monitor traffic data based on like operating system, like iOS, Android and stuff?
Yes.
Just so we can kind of see like during classroom time,
right?
How much time, okay.
Definitely.
Is that something that we do at all?
We do monitor, right, yeah. I'm trying to relate it to the question about the wide area network you had.
Well, that just made me think of this question.
Oh, I see.
It's not related.
Yeah. Yeah, we do monitor. We also have, internet filtering solution in place. With the wireless controller itself can give us that data. Yeah, we can split it by operating system if that is a requirement.
I don't know if it's to Diane, but do we do anything with like that data? Like if we're noticing like excessive traffic, like, on people's phones during like class time, like, is that something we address somehow, or have we thought about that?
Well, we've thought about it, but we haven't tracked it. Here's what I think about traffic on the internet. This is what I think as the superintendent. Nobody may agree with me. I believe that our internet access has been an engagement piece for students to come to school. So I don't get too worked up. I'm not really like monitoring like, oh my gosh, how much they're using, because if it gets them in school and has them engaged to come to school, I'm kind of okay with that. Now, my technology guys are staring me down. They may have another idea about that, but I feel like it's, even on their own devices. It's amazing what teachers do with kids and their own devices. It's amazing. So anyway, that looks like Rick wants to say.
Yeah, I want to clear up when we say that we're monitoring and we're doing that. We have the ability to monitor network traffic, and we do that in order to address issues that are reported to us. We have a very small staff in the technology department that is generally busy all day, every day doing something. And so when we do get information that there are connection issues or there is slowness on the network, we are able to go and monitor traffic on that network in order to see, and we do take some device information is provided by connecting to our network, such as the iOS version, the type of, if it's a phone or if it's a tablet, if it's a laptop computer, if it's wired, right, we get information from that. But we're not taking necessarily personally identifiable information, and we don't have the resources to do that off of the devices connecting wirelessly. But we can see traffic and patterns, and we may find that we have an issue with a specific type of phone or a specific operating system that is causing the issue, that we're able to use that information to remedy the problem. So by monitoring, that would be the case that we're monitoring now. We're not looking on a daily basis or any frequency for usage by a particular individual or a particular device before and during or after work hours. It's a troubleshooting mechanism when we employ it.
And my other question is in terms of like future projects and stuff, specifically towards tech. I can understand like replacing computers and stuff, but are we looking at, or do we have already like other things such as, I'm thinking things related to like 3D printers or like stuff towards like coding and programming, augmented reality things that could be engaging with students?
You want to take it? There are a few programs that are already using 3D printers and laser cutters. These are programs that are developed by the schools themselves, and they're implementing these programs. We do support them.
And we did Code to the Future at Biella. Right. Last year was a pilot year that I think I might have sent some stuff in my update. If not, I'll do it this week. Very successful, and it's rather expensive, so we need to take a look at if there's other ways in which we can provide that, that programming, but it was definitely moving in that direction.
And I think in relation to like coding, like if we're buying computers, I would assume, would coding require more powerful computers than Chromebooks for like compiling and such, or not?
You would be amazed. Right now, they do a lot of this on tablets.
Yeah.
Yes. We do have requirements for higher power computing for other programs, or so like GIS, AutoCAD, and we do have programs of that kind. And we see some sites actually implementing this kind of projects, programs, in their curriculums.
And my other question just relates onto Measure INL as a whole. I think it seems like there's constant updates and information constantly changing. And I was thinking of it in the context of like our future like bond measure as well, and like the idea of having like some sort of like public portal that we could like not only just see this information, but maybe look at it like per school so that people could get updates as to where their school's at. I know you're talking about like a newsletter and such, but I think this is something that, you know, people could go to consistently. But also in terms of like the accountability, like if we're thinking about something in the future, we could say, look, this is how we've spent money in the past. You know, your money's being spent well. So I don't know if we have that. I don't think we do, but if we could develop something like that, I think it'd be great. But the other thing that I'm wondering is in relation to like how we're spending money like on tech or how much tech we have, are we able to compare ourselves to like other local districts to see kind of how we're doing in relation to other districts? Is that some sort of like information that we could get? Like, are we ahead, are we behind? And
I think I don't know if we go out and compare exactly, but we know that there's a few districts in the area that were embarking down this road similarly as we were. We know there's other districts that have done what we've done now. So it kind of went both ways. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel of technology. A lot of the technologies that we're putting in have been in the private sector and industry for a while now. We're building out an infrastructure that was neglected for years in terms of bandwidth and capacity, as well as access, mainly via wireless. So we've installed that or implemented that through these projects, which I would say if you looked even a broader sample across the state, you know, putting a wireless access point in every classroom was something that I did in another district in 2008. So it's not, we're still in the catch-up mode here, getting it to a level, but expectation is tenfold what it was in 2008 for the use of technology in the business office or in the classroom in a school district. And the demands for that, as you know, video is heavily online, right? You can go and watch the board video on YouTube tomorrow morning in your classroom if you chose to. So the requirement and the resources necessary for that have grown. And so when we designed the network that we put in, we also designed it to scale, right? So that we could add to it as need came in the future, where we might not necessarily have to do a complete rip and replace like we did this time. So we tried to safeguard the investment by putting in a network that could scale. Saying that, there will be some point in the future where the network will need to be replaced again. It's inevitable. But you know, our goal up with initial design was about that 8 to 10 year mark with the network, knowing that we hopefully could scale it for a couple of years after that and it would still be relevant to the needs of the school district. The one unknown that we can't predict is where technology will be in 6 years, and all the types of devices that may be used and all of the technologies that will transport on a data network. So as those come forward, we'll have to address that, find appropriate ways to address that, and the funding associated with that. It's not a given that bond funding will be there for technology. When we passed Measure INL and budgets were allocated and discussed, it was $42 million towards technology, 13 million of it coming from Measure I and 29 million coming from, 13 million coming from Measure L, the elementary school district, and $29 million coming from from Measure I, the high school district, for technology, both infrastructure and classroom technology moving forward. And with that, we'll be able to accomplish all that, plus the security cameras, and really the recabling of the entire infrastructure to support these new technologies.
If I can add one thing, so, okay, the infrastructure is in place, so it's good, right? We have to look at what do we do with this technology, how is it being used, right? And we're seeing, you know, the engagement we have with our sites. Just think that all the 12,000 Chromebooks that were bought by sites themselves. So we just say, here, we built it, and then they came, right? Because now they have it, and then the ingenuity you see at each site, and know how they're using technology there. We honestly didn't have to do much there. It was more than anything was grassroots, right? So, oh, there's a Google environment, we know how to use this one, we understand it, and then it developed. And it comes back to some training session we had way back for Google, and people did see that potential there, and then they run with it. We do have some tech TOSAs that are providing training throughout the district. They're not necessarily the evangelists for us, although I think they are. But you know, they do provide that kind of support, so they know. Okay, for this specific environment, let's take the Google environment. There are these people that can always teach, you know, show them the ropes there. But there are lots of teachers that are coming with their different solutions. Teachers work in different ways. They want to grab different parts and put them in their workflow, however they're working there. And then our tech TOSAs are learning that. We're learning from them. And we are trying to put together a flexible environment that can accommodate that. And you will see when we'll come with the classroom technology a bit to present to you, how that is actually thought through there, because we want this kind of flexible platform that enables teachers to be creative the way they want to be.
That sounded awesome. I like it. The one last question, just because I'm very curious, and I don't think I noticed before, but I'm just curious, with all the like Wi-Fi routers and stuff that might have been installed recently, are they running the newer Wi-Fi 6 or an older version?
We just did an upgrade on our wireless controller, and we failed miserably, so we had to redo it just before the school started. There was a bug with it, so yeah, we're running on 2 versions back from the wireless, you know, the stable version right now. Still working on.
Okay, thank you, Director De La Cruz, and then Director Fong.
I have kind of the anti-technology question. So in California's reality now, and probably in the future, we're going to be experiencing some de-energization, where essentially our technology will completely go away. And I'm wondering, to the extent that, you know, we're talking about technology upgrades that, you know, I notice here we're talking about alternative energy sources, but I wonder if our technology upgrades also include plans for de-energization events and how our technology would be able to withstand that.
Thank you for bringing that up. We're going to start with PG&E coming to do a presentation to the board at the next meeting. The city and the county have shared their de-energization plans for us to, would have liked to have been at the table, but anyway, we'll work on that in developing them. And so we'll be coming back to the board after the PG&E presentation to you folks about how we would like to move forward.
Director Fong.
Thank you, Director Bika, for talking about being flexible and providing a flexible environment for teachers to use technology how they see fit. I think that is a great segue into what I want to say next to my fellow board members, and as a discussion, right, as a discussion. And it actually flows into the strategic plan, which is our next item on the agenda. And I think that I want to know how we continue to use technology in our district, and what the overall plan is, and how the teachers know what to do, and what kind of professional development. I know we have some, but I don't know if we have kind of an overall plan, or maybe you do, Diana, and we just don't know about it yet. So for example, if we're talking about coding, we've talked about coding quite a bit, but really it's just not coding, it's kind of, how do we teach for the future like computational thinking? How do we train all our kids in computational thinking so that they're ready in the future as we're move forward with our strategic plan, that they are ready for jobs that aren't invented yet, right? That's always the future. So I'm thinking about those kinds of things too, and Diane, I know I'm sure you're thinking about those too. And when we're talking about digital citizenship, we've talked a lot about digital citizenship in terms of, you know, don't share your password and be safe on the computer, and but really, are we talking, and teachers, actually teachers, and some teachers do, and we just don't hear about it, and I'd love to hear about it, because I'm sure there are many, many brilliant things going out there, but we just don't get to hear too much about it when we're focusing on the English and the math and those kinds of more finite things. But in terms of how we use technology to make a better world, increase democracy, you know, affect each other in positive ways, and how we do that as a district together, and how we give permission and invitation and support for our staff to continue with that, and those kinds of bigger picture type things, given the flexibility and the hardware that you have put in place for us to use. So those are big picture ideas, and maybe we can hear something about that, or have teachers tell us what they're doing and what they want to do and how they want to be supported and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of vague, but
it's like we always need an ed tech department, honestly. Some teachers that, you know, they use technology and, you know, that they can develop this kind of a program. It has to be intentional. Teachers have to see teachers doing it and, you know, learn from them. And there are many other ways, you know, that they need to get the exposure somehow. There are so many conferences. I'm not sure how many of these conferences our teachers attend. So that's another avenue there, or maybe a missed opportunity. We can invite, you know, people to do workshops with our staff. So there are many, many, many ways to get to that point, and then eventually formalize it in some way.
And what does AI have to do with us and all of that coming?
If I may, this is totally a whole different topic. So if we want to do a request for information around, you know, technology and as part of the teaching and learning process, I think that would be a better time and place to have that discussion, and staff can be prepared to provide that information.
It's just segueing between these two. Technology and strategic planning.
Okay, so if there's no more, I'm going to actually move from this to the next.
I just want to make sure, Director Medina, that we answered your question. When you're referred to wireless 6, were you talking about category 6 and 6A cabling for wireless access points?
Wi-Fi 6 standard that's able to like manage loads better, you know, based on the amount of like data flowing per device that's using that router.
Thank you.
We're done? Okay. All right, F8, discussion item, Santa Rosa Schools Strategic Plan. Input time. I'm sorry, F7, where on Parker? You confused me with the whole segueing to the next one, which is not what.
Yes, my bad. It was all me.
F7, Parker Hill Road School Site. Let's stay on topic, shall we?
Why Jenny take control?
Good evening again. Tonight is designed to be a brief update on the Parker Hill location, formerly the Hidden Valley Satellite School. We presented several months ago in coordination with Keysight Technologies about the relationship that has evolved over decades with Keysight by providing a school location, including childcare, at the Parker Hill Road location, and what we were going to do to move forward with that plan, including the 2 community forums that we had and the online survey to provide feedback about desires of the community at that location. I think most of us know this here, but it dates back to the 90s. The satellite campus opened in 1993. It addressed overcrowding and provided a local campus for Keysight employees, students, as well as childcare at that site. As we discussed previously, there is a mutual interest to move forward with the relationship from both SRCS and Keysight. We have talked to them about having a child care facility at that site, regardless of the educational program that may be housed there. And we've also talked to them about child care facility ready for the 2021 school year. I will share that it's hard for me to believe, even at this point, that we're not completely done with our insurance claim from the 2017 Tubbs fires, although we have come to agreement on structures, both at the Hidden Valley Satellite location as well as Alba Lane, and so now we have contents, some other managerial expenses to close out our claim, which I would expect between now and probably January to do. But with that said, we now have money for that site to move this forward. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. A little bit on overall feedback between the 2 community forums. We probably had combined close to 50 people. That would be 48 at the first forum and 2 or 3 at the second forum to talk about the satellite location, including 60 online responses. The one thing that consistently at the top was infant and toddler daycare, childcare, and or preschool for both general education or SPED population, rebuild the satellite as before with childcare, move at Santa Rosa, accelerated charter, and very high ranking, these were not in particular order, was having STEM, STEAM, or STREAM programs at that school site to not only take advantage of the relationship with Keysight, but also the demonstrated need in our community for that skill set in our students. So with knowing the insurance settlement as well as our desire to move forward with that relationship with Keysight, we are going to bring an architect back for approval to start the design and concept for the childcare facility. It will then go out to bid, and then ultimately starting with construction, hopefully sometime in the mid-spring time of 2020. The nice thing about this construction project is we're not going to have to battle with a school site and waiting for the school year to get out, unfortunately. But that does give us a different opportunity where we're not constrained by that 7.5-week, 8-week time window that we see at some of the other sites that impact our projects that we talked about earlier. I'll ask Dr. Guzman if she wants to speak briefly about the educational program that is still to be determined as we move forward with this process and the steps we're going through with that.
So, but the priority, obviously, as Mr. Edson talked about with the child care, that is the first priority. And then in January of 2020, we'd like to start engaging all stakeholders to look about what that educational program could possibly be. I've asked for a little bit of time as we move through some of our additional projects that we have on the table, and also knowing that this, whatever sort of educational programs we have will not be for at least 2 years out. So that's sort of our timeline, and as we have more specifics and dates, obviously we will share that with the board.
So on the timeline on the screen, obviously tonight's August 14th with a brief update to the board. On the 28th, we plan to bring back architect approval, and then another board update in the fall with spring, summer construction, with a facility open in August of 2019 for childcare at that facility to address the desire and need of the key site organization with their needs, as well as what our needs are as a school district, and as we finalize and develop plans for an educational program at that site.
Thanks.
I'll turn it back to the board.
Director De La Cruz.
Just a question. How does the planning at the site kind of intersect or connect at all with the Steel Lane preschool curriculum program? Does it at all?
Not at this time, but that's definitely something we could look at.
Is it just that it's a focus on kind of key site employees, children, or?
So key site employees, are you talking about the childcare? They would get priority. However, students from Santa Rosa City Schools, wherever they are, would also have opportunities to participate in that, because as we know, throughout the city, childcare is a need, and especially after the fires with so much loss. So it would obviously priority for them, but also priority for us as well.
So it's the childcare facility would be kind of K through or TK or preschool, or kind of what's the scope of?
I don't know necessarily about going down to preschool just because there's different rules around that, but definitely for TK and above.
Okay. Dr. Manieri.
Along those same lines, so who would actually be providing the childcare? Would they be SRCS employees? Would it be a partnership with like 4Cs or Head Start? Like what would that look like?
Well, I think that kind of depends. Is my understanding. I know that Keyside is here, and that they were going to maybe go out and do an, was it RFP around who that might possibly be. And so I'm sure they're going to be looking at different vendors or different opportunities for those services to be provided.
We, I don't know if Mr. Mazzara, if you want to speak to this at all, but our intent would be first to have it be a Santa Rosa City's childcare, so it'd be our staff. But the workforce issue is a problem throughout, and so that's the deciding factor of the potential of Keyside maybe going out and doing something in an RFP process. But we would really like to just have it be Santa Rosa City Schools childcare and staffed by our folks. So that's one. The second thing is childcare versus preschool. The Steel Lane preschool is pretty specialized, and I don't know, Mr. Mazzara, if you want to speak to that. This is really just intended to be childcare.
Yeah, preschool it comes with a whole curriculum and other things and regulations. Steel Lane has a preschool program by the North Bay, and as well as our own special ed. So this plan is not necessarily to expand that or develop that. And we brought here an idea, an RFP we'll be producing with new money from Governor Newsom around preschool at Lewis, which would add, kind of expand that. So this is not based in that world. And again, like childcare, not necessarily preschool, which is a different layer curriculum, as others have said.
Director De La Cruz.
So I guess I just wonder, do we have any other examples of kind of this public-private partnership that feels a little strange to have in certain parts of our town and not in others, and kind of directed at a certain type of student and parent and maybe not others? So I'm just wondering kind of how we're going to roll this out with full participation of folks who really need to participate in this conversation and different.
Well, you know, we have a great shortage of childcare. And so there's not a particular school at this time tied to the Parker Hills site. And so as we begin the childcare, and that I think that should say actually August 2020, not August 2019 is when we would open, is that right? Or is it 19?
You are correct.
20. We would definitely have the key site parents there, but our intent that whatever the school site or program that is developed on the Parker Hill site is going to be open to the entire district. It is not going to be, let's say, for example, it might be SHRAX, the accelerated charter, just an example. What we would want to do is definitely bring over the program that SHRAX has created, but that it be open for the entire district. So, which then would mean childcare would be open for the entire district at that facility.
Okay. Oh, Director Manieri, sorry.
I'm hearing that the child care will be open to all, which is really great. And to Director De La Cruz's comment, I know that Keysight will get priority, but is it possible for our teachers and staff to be on some sort of priority as well? Because I mean, that's definitely, I mean, I'm also thinking like attract and retain, right? And all these conversations that we've been having, that's something that's come up, is the childcare.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that. We did a polling, and when we did the polling, we asked that question about childcare. It did not really poll very highly about our staff wanting childcare. I was actually very surprised that it didn't poll higher. But we're open. This is an opportunity at this Parker Hill space to do something different, and it's gonna match what the board has created in terms of a strategic plan. So that's our guide. So to ensure the equity that our strategic plan, the new one, drives, it's gonna be naturally in there.
I mean, I would suggest maybe along those lines that we just look at kind of like our charter school lottery process, and which we amended to try to increase diversity at our charter schools, and has been successful in that way, and make sure that we're real intentional about how we fill those seats. So, and the other thing is just like with the architect, when they come back, I mean, I assume that the architect is going to do this, but I would be interested to know when we see designs for this initial facility, how the architect is taken into consideration, how that site can be maximized for future facilities, and really kind of show, you know, how that is being considered to make sure that we can really maximize that. So if we're gonna move SRAX or something, then it's gotta be bigger, or else why move it? Yeah, so that we can really grow it, or STEAM school or something, so that we can really grow it and make it available to everyone in the district, particularly because it's a slightly more central location.
I would say Keysight has been really, really collaborative about looking at that space and what we could potentially do with that space, and so, you know, we're appreciative of that. We also think that Keysight is a naturally built-in laboratory, both ways, for students and for people at Keysight to come to the school. So again, it's a wonderful opportunity for us at Parker Hill to do something different, Director Fong, in the way that we educate. Yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity. And I know that the team is going to have committees come together of stakeholders to help design and construct what this is going to look like. And so we're going to be sure that it's a diverse community that represents all of the people in our district. And I know you guys had your hands up, so I don't know, Director Close, did you want, if they wanted to be recognized for?
I just want to come back to Director Manieri's point. At the last board meeting, we brought a G item to illustrate the policies in our after-care child program that's run by the district, and we articulated that kind of priority. Keysight, school employees, it's a tracked and retained issue, obviously, for Keysight and for us as well, and we recognize that, and we're currently operating with those kind of priorities.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to
just one last quick question. I just want to confirm this August on that last slide. That's supposed to be 2020, right, or 2021? 2020. Okay.
2020. Okay, discussion item, Santa Rosa City Schools strategic plan input.
So I'm placing this item actually on the board agenda so that it is upfront and out there, the actual versions that the board has come up with in terms of our mission and vision. It's also to remind people of the dates that our community meetings are, when the survey will be available and when it will close, and then when the board will come back with a presentation of the revised strategic plan. I will note that it says October 28th, and I believe it should probably say October 23rd because that's the date of our board meeting, and so we'll make that revision. We have now presented the strategic plan to all of the administrators. We handed out over 1,000 of these at our welcome back on Monday. I know that whatever group we're meeting with, we are presenting this and talking about the fact that there are going to be community input days. So I'm going to keep putting this on there so that it's an opportunity for people to give input here at this meeting. So,
Director Medina, Director Sheffield.
Yeah, I actually had a question, kind of in part related to this, but I was reading, I think, the English Learner Master Plan the other day, and I think some of the initial language kind of made me think of the old strategic plan, and so I'm wondering, as part of like this process, are there then future documents, do we know, that we would maybe review using this?
yes, they will. I mean, we're, Deputy Superintendent left, to the point of when you're requesting a purchase order, it's aligned to the priorities. I mean, we're gonna look at, through the lens of the strategic plan, for all processes, practice, actions, policies, everything that we do. This is our guide. And in fact, I said on Monday in front of everybody, I am so appreciative of this board working together with me, of course, to provide such a roadmap for this district with regards to the direction, the access, where we need to be as a district and where we need to go. So yes, wholeheartedly yes.
Director Sheffield.
I just made a note to myself to thank you, Diane, for helping guide us through this process, and Carlos, who, for facilitating, and it was, for me, it was just an incredible experience working with all of you, the board, and with staff, and with you, Diane, through this process. And now as we get into the next phase, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to hear you speak about all the ways of rolling this out and trying to do as much as we can to engage the community on this, as with so many other things, just the way that we message this and the way that we deliver it to the community is really important. And I know that my colleagues on the board sort of share, we're all in agreement on that. It is within the best interest of the school or the community to encourage as much participation as we can in the process. The attendance at community and public forum meetings from here on out, online input, promotion of district offices and school websites, and conversations with school staff, definitely. And obviously this means a lot of work on the district side of things to process and sort of synthesize the information that we're receiving back. But there's so much value in that, and so I just want to thank you for understanding and sort of even just appreciating that is such a huge component of the process. Thank you.
I appreciate that. We are also meeting the executive board of the executive team of the board will be meeting with SRTA and CSEA to get feedback on the strategic plan on September 16th. And so I'm very pleased and happy that both groups have agreed to come together and meet. So, we will do auto dialer out as it gets closer in Spanish and English to put the word out there and spread the word. We have a list of community partners that we email regularly to. It will go out in that. So yeah, we want a full house for both days.
Okay, I wanted to, did you have your hand up?
Are you going to call number 7? Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Are you going to call this out? Okay, go ahead.
Even if you want to raise your hand, you I'm just going to wrap up. No one was raising their hand, so is that a hand raise? Okay, you raising your hand again? Director Medina.
I was just going to say, you know, at the point that we're maybe done with this whole process, at least in terms of the main goals and such, for me, I think it'd be really good to make one of your cool videos, Dan. I like this, but I think just kind of presenting it. I mean, I like them, but I think kind of in part to market what we've come up with, I think would be great. So
I'll let you contact my agent. See if we can broker that deal.
You can go ahead. Director Fong.
Apropos of the technology discussion that we had, kind of out of place, but everything's connected, so you can't just slice and dice. If we're taking a look at, you can't really read that, but if you were taking a look at priority 4, teaching and learning environment and resources, so the sentence in there, teaching, learning environment and resources, supporting the classrooms, district will provide teachers with current tools and training to support pedagogical leadership and innovation. We believe in that. We really believed in that because we talked about it. We talked about not using the word technology because technology is like the water we swim in right now, is the air we breathe. So current tools, current, we're always behind, but current. And back to Director B, because shout out to teachers and how he provides a flexible, and Rick, how you provide a flexible environment for teachers to have the tools to do what they want to do and lead the way. So it's just powerful. I love this. And then priority 7, we're all very proud of it, and we thank and appreciate Jenny for penning this part of it in terms of, yes, we are fierce and we're talking about sustainable funding, full and fair funding. We all are committed to that because, you know, with the bond and the parcel or whatever comes down the pike in terms of California School Boards Association or the state legislature, the governor, we have to have the kind of funds that support our students. So 7 is very important to us. So we shout it out all the time, and I don't want you to be the only one shouting it out because we're all behind that.
Okay, if there are no other hands, I will wrap it up. I just want to repeat in front of the board what I said Monday morning, because I think only Director Fong was there, that you know, this was a really different process, this strategic planning process, than the one I did 6 years ago. And really, because it's a different board and it was a different environment, and I feel like I would characterize the process the first time as a negotiation, and I think what we came up with reflected that. You know, it was a lot of sort of, you know, like some mediators say, like it's a good resolution if everybody leaves equally mad. You know, I feel like that's the kind of process it was, and so it was a step in the right direction from the No Child Left Behind days and all that, but. This, I feel like, you know, the group worked so much better together, and, you know, it really works with shared values and respect and mutual respect, that it was much better example of real collaborative, inspired thinking, real blue sky thinking, and real solution-oriented thinking. And so I wanted to thank the board for that process, and to Superintendent and Dr. Ayala, who I'm sure is watching us now from Southern California, for that process, and kind of, you know, congratulate us for, I think, what is a really great draft, and I really look forward to hearing feedback from our stakeholders.
I would also add that now we have had people who have this same belief around access, equity, so many things, Dr. Acosta, Karina, Huey, the CDE, whoever and anybody I can share this with as a draft. You guys have created a cutting edge mission and vision. You are ahead of the game right now. The state and at least the western half of the nation, people are amazed and incredulous that a board of 7 could come together to create this kind of plan. So I'm pretty doggone proud of all you.
Vice President Fong.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to equal Omar over here.
Please don't throw that challenge down.
I want everyone to understand that this strategic plan is aspirational, that it is in no way says we're not doing enough. It's not that we're not doing enough or anyone's not doing enough or we're not doing it well enough, but this is an aspirational, so what are we doing for 5 years in the future? It's our vision. So let's continue the good things and keep building on the human capital that we have and do it together.
Hear, hear. Okay, F9, our last item is the discussion item around the formation of a Santa Rosa City Schools Foundation, and I think I'm on deck to start this one. Yeah, okay. So one of my very first board meetings, so many years ago, we had the parent reports, and one school parent organization came up and said, we had a golf tournament and a wine auction, and we raised, this is to the best of my recollection, but I think it's actually pretty good, we raised $49,000, and we got new computers for the computer lab, and we gave every teacher $1,400. And then up walks the parent leading the next school's parent organization, and she said, we had a bake sale, and we raised $1,200, and we gave every teacher $72 for their classroom. And that was a knife in my heart, and right at that time, it was like the very same month I was new on the board, and the San Francisco Public Press, which everyone should support, did this great whole issue all around the impact of private money on public schools and the disparities that it creates, and the basis that our schools are so underfunded that it goes to parents to raise money to fill the gaps. And we don't begrudge parents their ability or their right or their desire to do this at all, but what it means is that certain school communities have different abilities to raise that money than other school communities, and it does create disparities. So while we give the schools the same amount of money, or post LCAP, actually we have the ability to be a little bit more creative about that, still you're gonna get different stuff at some schools and different opportunities at some schools than at others. And it just ain't fair. And so it was real early on when I think Socorro and I actually Socorro said, this is one of the only districts I know that doesn't have a district-wide foundation to make sure that these holes are filled and that there's some equity among the schools and that the kids have equal opportunity to have enrichment activities and to have some of the extra stuff and to have gardens and have this stuff. And so it was pretty early that I started working actually with now Principal Barr from Murray Creo on creating we did a draft mission, vision, values thing and started gathering up potential board members to start a district-wide foundation and doing some research about how we could do that. And when you pitch people in the community, you tell them the thing that I led with, or you tell them things like, last week, one school took their kids to the Science Museum in San Francisco, and another school walked their kids down to Rayleigh's to look at healthy food choices. That was also true. And it was probably the kids who went to the Science Museum who already have been to the Science Museum, and the kids who walked to Rayleigh's who really needed to go to the Science Museum because they didn't get to go. And the community's real supportive of this. So we've been working on this idea, and Diane and we've talked to Mary Jane Burke in Marin, who they started a district-wide foundation, or actually it was a county-wide, they did a county-wide foundation, but it operates similarly. That's been really successful just in the first few years. But I think just because of everything that goes on, it just kept getting backburnered. And finally, Diane squirreled away some money that was some donated money that we are hoping to, with the board's approval, use as the startup funds for a district-wide foundation that could actually hire an ED and grow it. The Marin Foundation grew from zero to about $800,000 a year in just 3 years, and they've offered their help and some of their tools and their model, and will give us all the help we need. And so, you know, I've started a little baby nonprofit, and I'm also working on another group that's incubating. It's kind of a weird process where you sort of, you know, some group people come together and incubate something and then fly, and it's free, but that's sort of the process we have started. We've already started talking to some potential board members, and now it's getting serious. If the board says, yes, this donated money can be purposed to start a district-wide foundation, then kind of next steps that I'd like to do is appoint an ad hoc, so bring on 2 other board members to be part of that incubation team, and we would incubate and then fly and let it be free. And it would be independent of this board, although our recommendation, which of course the whole incubation team would come up with, is that there be, you know, the board president or his or her designee and the superintendent and or his or designee as members of the board at all times, to just have that voice of consistency with the district direction. But that foundation they'd be independent, they'd raise the money, they'd do grant making with the idea of filling those gaps and addressing the inequity that is created by private money in our schools. So with that intro, I will let Diane talk about the pot of money.
We have a pot of money that we have collected over time. It is about $150,000. So it's definitely something we could get started with. I would ask direction from the board, the ability to bring forward an action item to basically transfer those funds to an organization or incubation organization to help get the nonprofit started. We're going to work out some of those details, but first and foremost, just the board's thoughts on a foundation, and then second, the idea of transferring these donated funds to start that foundation.
Great. Director McCormick.
First of all, I would like to say I'm hugely in support of this. But just in this meeting alone, I find it disheartening that we've spent just so much time talking about a parcel tax, bonds, and now fundraisers and foundations. And it is just excruciating to me how desperate we are in education for money. It's ridiculous. And it just makes me angry, it makes me sad. I think this is the direction we need to go, because we just gotta get out there and compete with the tools that we have available to us. But anybody listening to this meeting, you know, in the business sector and in the private sector, people show their values by what they invest in and where they spend their money. And if you value education, you need to bring your money and invest in education, whether it's a parcel tax or helping get that passed, or establishing another bond, going out for another bond, or helping build a foundation and giving to that foundation. It's just ridiculous that we have to do it, but I think we have to do it. And I'm so grateful that we have a little pot of money to start it with. And I have one question. Is it, or maybe this is premature to ask this, but are we gonna looking to set it up as like a endowment type of thing, or what would that look like?
I mean, that would be the dream, you know, that we'd end up having an endowment and it self-funds. I think this community can do this. I really do. Yes, yes. So, and we have people wanting to help us, including Mr. McCormick. I mean, we have people who want to help us.
Yeah, definitely an endowment is a great goal.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just always so inspired year after year after year at the Doyle Scholarship at Santa Rosa Junior College, and it's the second largest endowment in the country of its kind. And just to see what type of a legacy can grow out of an endowment over years, and how many millions of dollars and how many thousands of students were personally affected by something like that. I mean, we need to build that for Santa Rosa City Schools. Like, it's a no-brainer. So I'm excited we're pushing towards this.
Ditto. Adelante.
Ditto. Okay, Rage?
Yes, yes.
Director Medina?
Well, in terms of the idea, it sounds great. I'm just curious in terms of like the pot of money, is there like, you know, I don't know, like in terms of like where it came from or whatever, but like any restrictions or whatever in terms of like how we spend it? Like I've never thought of like us giving money to like an organization and how that works. I'm just curious about that.
It's been over, so this is I'm 4.5 years in, donations that come in that have no specific name to it. It just comes into the district. We're donating this money. So wasn't 150,000 at one time. It's these little things that come and it's all gathered up, and it's gotten to the point where it's at 150,000. And so rather than sit there collecting 0.000001% interest, why don't we put it to work? And definitely, I don't know if you saw the agenda item, but we're looking at schools that get $600 in donations to 94,000. You know, how can we help out those $600 donated schools? So.
Yeah, and that tally was just started, I think, when Socorro and I started saying there's a district-wide foundation, and we wanted it to be front and center. That's when that got added to the agenda, that we really wanted it to be front and center, the disparities in our our schools' fundraising abilities. And it is always disheartening.
And I don't know. I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer or just being too petty, but I'm just curious, like, would it be something like, you know, I imagine like the foundation growing and like blossoming and being like amazing, but like with those $150,000 or whatever, like would it be something that maybe could be like a loan to the foundation and they would give us back in the district at some point or something? I don't know, that's just what ran through my head, but
yeah,
it's not that important.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think that it is a leverage point to grow it larger. So, like, I just think if we get the incubation team from the board together to think about how we could leverage those dollars. And I was just telling Director Manieri, one of the best models is the Allen model, like you guys said. I mean, in 3 years, they've reached endowment, right? Or close to it. And then Santa Rosa High School's foundation is strong, and they've, you know, offered. The Marin County model is, it is so good, and they've offered to help as well, Schools Plus. So there's a lot of models out there that we can go with and that the incubation team can think about. I think now's the time. We've reached a point where we've got to move and act, just as Director McCormick was talking about. We have enough funds to seed it, and I say let's jump and see what we can do.
I'd encourage everybody to look at, I haven't actually spent a ton of time on the Schools Rules website, but Schools Rule is the Marin County Foundation, and they have this, and they have this advertising campaign that was done pro bono by outfit in San Francisco, and they've offered us the ability to have access to this stuff if we want. But it's this really smart, blunt, irreverent campaign that basically talks about equity. That points out the disparities, and that really just makes the case that, you know, the schools matter for everybody, and that everybody's, you know, the whole community relies on everyone being successful, and it's really brilliant and just really hard hitting. It's awesome, but it's really changed people's minds and got people's attention. So at any rate, so it sounds like that we have some consensus around bringing this back, and which is great, thank you. I do want to add a couple people to our incubation team, so raise your hand if you're interested in being on that. Okay, so we're gonna do a picket. Laurie might have seen that, so I'm gonna hide it. She sometimes looks, so we're gonna do a pick a number between 1 through 10.
3, 4, 5.
The number was 7, and so we've got Stephanie and Ed. Good number picking. Okay, get to work. We'll be in touch. All right, with that.
can't hear me? Oh my gosh. On the G items, I wanted to note that we have moved upcoming board discussion to an item within the this G. So you don't have to click on a link and go look at it. It's right there, okay? Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll adjourn and see you in a couple weeks.